The Garlic Burger Murder, a Sleepy Creek Cozy Mystery, Book 6. Written by Rosie A. Point. Chapter 1. I could count on one hand the number of times I'd received a handwritten letter, and on one finger how many times that letter had been pink and perfumed. That time, it had been penned by my annoying yet somehow endearing cousin Agatha Dupin, announcing her arrival in Sleepy Creek. But this time the letter was even weirder. No mean feat given how strange that first letter had been. I sat at my worn desk, swinging back and forth on my new office chair, a splurge since my private investigation business was doing better, and frowned at the pink letter in my hand. The handwriting was a neat, swooping scrawl. The words were pretty, even if the message was not. For the attention of Christie Watson, you should be ashamed of yourself and the way you behave. The people of Sleepy Creek deserve better than a fake private investigator who meddles in other people's affairs and never does her job properly. It's my sincerest belief that you should pack up and leave this town before you taint it with your presence. It's already irreparably damaged thanks to you. I know all of your secrets and who you really are. You're an antisocial, unfriendly, horrible person, and I hope you rot in heck. From a person who knows. A person who knew what, exactly? My cousin was harebrained, but was she harebrained enough to send me a rude letter? I wasn't convinced. Aggy had been behaving differently of late, and by differently, I meant she'd been less erratic and more focused on work at the office. It wasn't too long ago that she'd tried to compete with me and open her own private investigation firm. I placed the letter on the desk, then hit the button on the intercom that linked to my receptionist. "Mindy, are you at your desk?" I asked. No response. I hit the button again. "Mindy? Hello?" A click was followed by a heavy sigh. "Yeah?" Mindy was the least enthusiastic secretary in Sleepy Creek. I'd have suspected her of sending the letter if not for the fact that she'd have emailed me her hate mail instead. "Has Aggy been in this morning?" "No." "Do you have any messages for me?" No." The response was punctuated by the plings and encouragement from the game she was playing on her cell phone. "You're sure about that? I'm expecting a call from Grizzy this morning." My best friend had recently had an adorable baby boy, and I'd promised I'd come by tonight to babysit. I was determined to protect the baby from Curly Fries, who could do no wrong in Grizzy's eyes, but who probably saw the baby as either competition or a snack. "Hello, Mindy." "No, there are, 0 messages. Oh, I'm on a win streak. Holla, I've got a..." She cut out, and I rolled my eyes. I had to get a new receptionist, but Mindy had graduated, and she'd pretty much settled into her position at my firm. I didn't have the heart to fire her, and she had her moments. None of them were particularly good moments, but she had them. I checked the time on my cell phone. It was almost time for lunch and a break at the burger bar with my best friend, the terrible twins, Missy and V and Aggy, who still hadn't turned up for work. My cousin was a lot to take at times, but she wasn't usually flaky. She was determined to become a private investigator so that she could inherit from her father's will and start her own bakery. But it was all a ruse set up by her father to protect Aggy from bad business partners who had illegal connections. I sighed, shifted the ridiculous pink letter to one side, and went through the dossiers on my desk. My laptop was currently on the fritz, and we were trying to save money for my fiancé's new business, so buying another PC wasn't on the cards at the moment. But I preferred the feeling of paper anyway, so this worked out. I was halfway through assessing the case of Mrs. Fine's missing cat collar when the door to my office swung open with such force that it hit the wall. Aggy shuffled into the room, her red hair a nest, a tiny cowboy hat clipped to the side of her head. She had an armful of shopping bags. Aggy. Sorry I'm late, she said, but I had to do something important. Shopping! Retail therapy, she said with a bright smile. It faded under my ire. What? You decided to go shopping instead of coming into work? Well, I thought it was okay since you hardly have any interesting cases. Trust my cousin to say it how it was. I'd thought I was socially awkward until I'd met her. Thanks, I said dryly. Next time, give me a call, will you? I boiled my cell phone in the washing machine. Huh? I dropped it in the washing machine without realizing, and I boiled it, she said. I need a new one. I pinched the bridge of my nose. You boiled your cell phone. Yeah, right. Okay. Stranger things had happened to Aggy. There was the time she'd been found standing over a bloodied corpse. That had been fun. In fact, I ought to be grateful it was just a boiled phone and not a corpse found in the laundry room. That would have been a problem since Aggy and I had recently moved in with Liam, my fiancé. Don't worry, Aggy said, unceremoniously dumping her shopping bags on top of my case files. The machine is totally fine. Great, I said. Great. So, what did you get? You could take the girl out of the shopping mall, but not the other way around. Curtains. Huh? Curtains for my bedroom. I've decided to decorate. Oh, that's something. Aggy was set up in the attic, and the arrangement was definitely not meant to be permanent. It was only until Aggy could get back on her feet, and while I loved my cousin, I couldn't wait to start my life with Liam. We were planning on getting married in a couple of months, and it would be nice to have the place to ourselves. Yeah, I'm doing curtains. Then I might redo the wallpaper up there, or ooh, I can get Wi-Fi installed. We already have Wi-Fi. Yeah, but my own Wi-Fi, Aggy said. I really want to make the place my own. Aggy, you understand this is temporary, right? She pouted, and it looked insane with that miniature cowboy hat pinned to her messy hair. You can't put up new wallpaper, not without asking Liam first. You realize he owns the house. Yeah, but Liam's a nice guy. He'll let me decorate, and you'll put in a good word for me, right? She gave me puppy dog eyes that had absolutely zero effect on me. Aggy was family, but she wasn't about to redecorate the attic. Thankfully, I was saved by the intercom buzzing on my phone. I hit the button. Mindy? I've got some lady here to see you. You're going to need to be more specific than that. I don't know. She's some lady with gray hair and she's real angry. She wants to see you. Is it Missy? Aggy paled and retreated to her favorite stool in the corner of my office, right next to the gray filing cabinets. No, but Hey, lady, wait a second, you can't... My office door swung open with a bang for the second time this morning. Chapter 2. The woman was vaguely familiar, but then so was everybody in Sleepy Creek. I'd seen most of the residents at the burger bar or around town. She walked into my office wearing a white dress that was belted at the waist, carrying a box from the burger bar in one hand and her purse in the other. Her gray hair was long and tied up so tightly that her hair thinned at the temples, and she wore an equally uptight look. "Good morning," I said. "It's noon." Her voice was husky, so good afternoon would be appropriate, except it's not because it's not a good afternoon. "I'm assuming you need my help." "Why else would I be here?" she asked, and took a seat in the rickety wooden chair in front of my desk. She set the burger box in her lap like she was afraid it would get stolen if she put it anywhere else, and then she studied me. Her dark eyes sweeping over me from head to my waist, since my toes were in my sneakers under the desk. Mindy got up from her desk without looking up from her phone and closed my office door for me. "You don't know who I am, do you?" the woman asked. "Unbelievable." Should I know who you are?" I asked. "I'm friends with Missy and V," she said. "So yeah, you should know who I am." I was still drawing a blank. "You do look familiar." "I'm Shell?" She looped her purse over the arm of the chair, then patted her chest. Chell? From Chell's scrapbooking adventures? You host adventure tours for scrapbooking enthusiasts? What would that look like? Visits to local stationery stores? Come to think of it, that sounded kind of fun. I didn't enjoy planning or stickers myself, but I could see the appeal. No, Chell said. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Where would you even go on a scrapbooking adventure? Stationery stores, Aggy piped up. I clicked my fingers and pointed at her. Exactly. Chell jolted in her chair and turned around. Good heavens, she said. How long have you been there? Years, decades, centuries, I said. Time is a construct when it comes to Aggy. My cousin grinned proudly, looking like a bizarre clown time traveler with her mini hat. What can I help you with, Chell? I didn't particularly enjoy the woman's demeanor, but I wasn't in any position to turn clients away, not with the upcoming wedding. We had so much to plan and save for at this point. I run the local scrapbooking and stationery store. It's right across from Terrible Two's Antiques, Chell said. Ah, that explained the connection between Chell and the twins. It's nice to meet you, Chell, I said. Yeah. That was from Aggy, who had decided now was the time to rifle through her many shopping bags. I gestured for her to take notes, dragging my fingers through the air like I was writing with a pencil, and she gasped and started digging for her notepad. When she wasn't giving me extra gray hairs, Aggy was astute at taking notes and noticing things I didn't. Helpful in this business. So, I said, rolling my chairs back and popping a candy cigarette out of a package on my desk. What's the deal? Theft? Vandalism? Missing pet? Chell frowned at me, then glanced over at Aggy. Maybe this was a mistake. I can assure you I have a 100% success rate, I said. Chell licked her lips, then nodded. Fine. I'm having an issue with a competitor. Another scrapbooker? I took a bite of my candy cigarette. No, and that's the problem, Chell said, tapping her fingertips on top of the bright red and yellow burger bar box. You see, I stock everything a scrapbooking enthusiast could ever want. Washi tapes, planners, organizers, stickers, sticky notes, books, journals, binder rings, and more. You name it, I've got it. Have you got those cute little tweezers? Aggy asked, tapping her forefinger and thumb together. The ones they use for peeling the stickers off and placing them down on the page? Of course, Chell said, without turning to look at her. We are the one-stop shop for all things stationery in this town. It's the reason I named my place Chell's Scrapbooking Adventures. Stepping into my store is an experience. Then you should have named it Chell's Scrapbooking Experience. Both Chell and I stared at Aggy, who gave a sheepish grin and turned her attention back to her notepad. Anyway, Chell said, everything was going perfectly until that piece of trash, Layla Karsten, decided to start stocking her own washi and stickers. But how does that involve my services? I gestured with my half-eaten candy cigarette. It doesn't really, she said. I just wanted to let you know that there are possible suspects for the crime. Which was what exactly? Chell popped open the burger box in her lap and peeked at the burger inside. I didn't blame her. I was hungry too, and Grizzy's place made the best burgers in Ohio. Someone has been stealing my stock, my washi and my stickers. And you think it was Layla Karsten? Aggy made furious notes, her pencil tipped with a pink feather scratching across her matching pink notepad. It might be her, yeah, Chell said. Or it might be someone else, like Missy and V. You just told me you were friends with them, I said. We are, kind of. We're more like frenemies, friendly rivals. Missy loves to tease me every chance she gets, and I've always felt like V was judging me. Anyway, it could be them, she said, and then removed the burger from the box like she couldn't resist it for a second longer. Or it could be Layla. She took a bite of the burger and chewed enthusiastically. Or it could be someone else. That came out around a mouthful of masticated meat and bun. I pulled a face. Right. Chell swallowed, then set the burger back in the box. That's your job to figure out, so what do you say? Can you help me or not? The case of the missing washi tape? I tilted my head to one side. Sure, I can help you. I work at a flat rate, half up front, half after the job is done. I scribbled the number down on a notepad and pressed it across the desk toward her. Chell studied the number, then rose from the chair. More expensive than I thought, she said. Allow me to get back to you. I've heard there's another private investigator in town. Maybe I'll go ask them. I cast a look at Aggy, who shrugged. Another private investigator? No shot. Chell hesitated as if she expected me to go back on my offer. Have a good day, Miss Watson. I'll be in touch. And then she exited the room, leaving the office door cracked open. Highly annoying. Have you heard of another private investigator in town? I asked Aggy. Not since I closed down my business, Aggy said. I pinched the bridge of my nose again. Aggy had carried around a typewriter at one point and claimed to have a private investigation business of her own. Thank goodness that phase was over. I got up to go close the door. A shrill scream penetrated the calm of my office. Chapter 3. Aggy jumped off her stool, stumbled forward, and tripped over her shopping bags. She fell forward, her arms pinwheeling, and I managed to catch her before she hit the floor. What was that? She asked, her face smushed against my shoulder. I set her upright. I believe, Agatha, that was a woman's scream. She paled and swayed on the spot. I hurried past her. Sit down if you're going to pass out, I called over my shoulder, then darted into the reception area of my tiny building. Mindy stood behind the reception desk, her phone forgotten for once, and her hands plastered against her cheeks like she was Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone. I followed her line of sight. Chell lay on the floor, face down, the burger box off to one side, the contents spilling onto the uninspired beige carpeting. Mindy, I said. My receptionist, all glittering makeup, blonde locks, and shocking red nails, let out a tiny whine. Mindy! Her gaze snapped to my face. What? Call 911, now. And then I turned toward the door. Aggy! My cousin appeared in the doorway, spotted the body, and gripped the door jambs on either side of her, digging her fingers into the wood. Yeah? Get me the gloves. Post haste. Aggy wobbled away as I hurried toward Chell. I crouched down beside her just as Aggy came stumbling out of the office with my box of disposable latex gloves. I took a pair, put them on, then pressed my fingers to Chell's neck. No pulse. Not even a faint one. Chell, I called her name softly. Chell. I rolled her onto her back, opened her mouth to check for any obstructions in her throat, but her air passages looked clear. Hello, yeah? Mindy was beside the reception desk, leaning against it to keep herself upright. There's a dead woman in the foyer. Details, Mindy, I said. Give them an address. Tell them to send an ambulance and the police. Mindy did as she was told while I tried to perform CPR on Chell, but there was no use. She was a goner. Miss Watson! Hardwick's tone was nasal and displeased as he stepped through the front door. The EMTs had already arrived on the scene and done their best to save Chell, but it was far too late. Just as I'd predicted, she was dead, and she hadn't choked to death. I sat on a chair in the makeshift waiting section to one side of the reception desk, between two potted plants that Mindy had clearly forgotten to water. I removed my latex gloves and tossed them into the wastepaper basket nearby, folding my arms as Hardwick came over. I'd hoped Arthur would have been the detective on the scene, but no such luck. I was stuck with Detective Hardwick. New to town with a shock of auburn hair, a mean stare, and an upturned nose. He was none other than my mortal enemy's great-nephew, 50 million times removed or whatever. In short, he was a relation of Mona Jonah's, and he'd made it his mission to make my life uncomfortable, going as far as to tell the captain of the police that they shouldn't work with me anymore. He stood in front of me, towering, so I had to look up to meet his gaze. "What a displeasure to see you, Hardwick," I said. "Oh, you can be assured that the feeling is entirely mutual." He whipped out his notepad and tapped the end of his pen against it. "You want to tell me how you're involved in all of this?" "You're going to need to be more specific than that," I said. "You take your detective's test recently or something?" "Sassy," he said. "Big words for a disgraced homicide detective from Boston." "Ex-homicide detective," I replied. "And I chose to retire. Trust me, I could investigate circles around you when I was in my prime." Still could. I didn't trust Hardwick. He'd made a mess of the last case, and he'd been hyper-fixated on getting me in trouble. "Always the Watson, never the Holmes, eh, Christie?" I wasn't the type to curse or be vulgar, but Hardwick brought me right to the brink. As much as I love these tender moments, Hardwick, I'd prefer it if you stuck to your darn job and took my statement. "And miss out on the fun of seeing you turn red with anger?" Hardwick asked. "You know what your problem is, Watson." "Oh, I feel like you're about to enlighten me, so why don't you go for it? You do love being right, much like a stopped clock." "That was a good one," Mindy said from the other side of the reception area, where she'd been playing a game on her phone. Aggy had stepped out for air after nearly passing out in an EMT's arms. "You think everything fits into a neat little box," Hardwick said. "Huh?" "You think that, because you were a homicide detective, you have the right to investigate cases, that you're qualified to do this job even though you are clearly not," he said. "You endanger yourself and this town on a daily basis. People like you, vigilantes, they're the bane of this world." "I know he didn't just say vigilante and bane in the same sentence," Mindy said. I frowned. "You know, Batman? Bane? No." Mindy rolled her eyes as she tapped on her cell phone screen. "Boomers. Everybody in this town respects you," Hardwick says. "They love you. They think that you're what's keeping them from the chaos. But I know the truth about you, Watson. If it seems too good to be true, it usually is," Hardwick said, twirling the end of his pen and jabbing it in my direction. "And you are a lie, from your head to your toes." "You done?" I asked. "Or did you want a monologue for another half an hour while Shell's corpse cools and this case goes unsolved? Somebody killed her." "How could you possibly know that?" Hardwick asked. "I gave her CPR, I said, and there was nothing obstructing her throat. She died shortly after eating that burger. It's either poisoning or natural causes. And if it was natural causes, well, why are you here darkening my doorstep? Why did you cordon off the area? My guess is the coroner's preliminary findings have found that it was not indeed natural causes. That doesn't take a Sherlock to figure out." "Take that, you puffed-up pumpkin fritter." Hardwick sniffed, wriggled that upturned nose. "How about you leave the deductions to the real cops," he said, "and give me your statement instead. What was Chell doing here?" I told him, but I left Missy and V out of it. Call me petty, but I wasn't interested in helping this man any more than I had to. He'd already annoyed me, and I didn't trust that he would keep this investigation impartial. He hadn't the last time, and if he found out that Missy and V were good friends of mine, he would definitely go after them. Hardwick took my statement, glancing at me with distaste every other minute. I answered his questions, and when he was done, he told me not to leave town. But there was a hint of wistfulness in his tone. Likely he wished I would leave. But that wasn't on the cards. Not with another murder to investigate and family and friends to protect. If you're enjoying the video, consider booping the like button. Chapter 4. Aggy and I arrived on my best friend's doorstep at 7 that evening after an argument about dinner and a discussion about boundaries. The latter had fallen on deaf ears. The former had reached resolution only when I'd begrudgingly allowed her to come with me to grab some pizzas from Liam's new pizzeria. The upside to that was I'd gotten to see my handsome fiancé in action. He was so happy at the pizzeria, and he came home every night smelling like pizza sauce and smiling from ear to ear. I got to see him at home less, but it was a small price to pay for his unbridled enthusiasm. Liam was living his dream, and I couldn't be happier for him. I knocked on Grizzy's front door, juggling pizza boxes. Aggy had the others, and Grizzy opened the door, little Oliver in her arms. "Oh, Chris, you're here," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm so relieved." "What's wrong?" I bustled inside, then stacked my boxes on top of Aggy's and directed my cousin toward the kitchen. "What happened? Is it Oliver? Are you guys okay?" Grizzy laughed through her tears. "I'm just emotional," she said, and hugged Oliver with his cute tuft of blonde hair on top of his soft baby crown to her chest. "I love him so much, Chris. And when Arthur and I decided we'd have a date night tonight, I thought I wouldn't be able to leave him at home, even if it was with you." "I don't blame you. I wouldn't trust curly fries around the baby either." I dropped my purse on the living room sofa. "You have got to stop with that," she said, laughing again. "No, it's not that. I just had such anxiety at the thought of leaving Oliver at home. And then the date got canceled, and now I feel terrible because I really did need a night out, but now, oh gosh, now I just don't know how to feel." I held out my arms for Oliver. He was only a few months old, and I rocked him, then rested his head against my shoulder. "He smiled at me the other day," Grizzy said. Like a fully gummy baby's smile, and my heart nearly exploded. He smelled like a baby. There was no other way to describe it, and it made my ovaries twinge. But there was no denying how stressful it had to be to care for a human all day long. Aggy bumped into the kitchen counter on her way out to the living room, proving my point. "I'll hold him," I said, "so you can have a break." Grizzy's home was comforting as always, with its cozy living room and leather sofas, and I followed her into the well-lit kitchen with clean white counters and the kitchen table, now stacked with pizza boxes. Little Oliver cooed and gurgled against my shoulder. "He's just been fed," Grizzy said, "so he should be sleepy and about ready for bedtime." "I wish I could go to bed this early," I said. "Imagine that. Uninterrupted sleep for hours, unless, of course, you're the one doing the interrupting. So what happened, Grizz?" "Arthur got called into work. Emergency." "Makes sense," I said, and sat down at the kitchen table, rocking Ollie. "Why do you say that?" Grizzy asked. "Because Chell, the woman from the stationery store, dropped dead at my office today." Grizzy gaped at me. "And it was after she took a bite of one of your burgers," I said. "Not to stress you out or anything?" Grizzy sat down at the table, shaking her head. "When will it end? This town is crazy. There's always something going on in this place. Murders or mobsters or—" "Mobsters?" Aggy asked. A knock clattered at the front door, and Aggy started. Thankfully, she didn't yell and wake the baby. I handed Oliver to Grizzy, then got up and went to see who it was. Missy and V stood on the doorstep, arm in arm, both wearing matching coats to fend off the start of fall. "There you are," I said. "Pizza's on the table." "We brought wine," V said and lifted the bottle in her hand. Missy held up a second one. "And news." I shut and locked the door. It paid to be careful in Sleepy Creek, and walked with them into the kitchen. Aggy went quiet the minute Missy entered the space. The pair had a weird relationship. Aggy found Missy intimidating, and Missy found Aggy both irritating and endearing, sort of like I felt about curly fries. "What's the news?" I asked, popping a lid on the top pizza box and sliding it onto the table so I could open the one underneath it. "Is it about Shell?" "No," V said, with a light frown. "But what about her, dear? Is she all right?" V had tinted her gray hair blue, while Missy wore hers in a severe gray bob. "She's dead," I said, "and you can expect a call from the cops at some point about it. Chell showed up in my office today talking about stolen scrapbooking supplies, said it was either you two or Layla Karsten." "Layla from that new bookstore on 5th? Missy asked. "The same." "Doesn't fit the profile," I said. "So the cops really haven't come to talk to you yet?" "Not yet," Missy said. V sniffled and dabbed under her nose. "Virginia," Missy said, "you cannot be serious. You barely knew the woman." "She was right across the street," V said. "Right there. Poor old girl. You know, it puts mortality into perspective. Any day could be our last." "Don't mind her," Missy said, dry as a graham cracker. "We received a rude letter today and she's still shaken up about it." "A letter, huh?" I leaned back, the pepperoni pizza tempting, but not tempting enough to put me off this particular line of questioning. "Written it on pink stationery? Smelled of perfume?" "Yeah." Missy tilted her head, her silvery gray brows drawing inward. "How did you— Oh, you got one too?" "I did," I said. "I thought it was another of Aggy's crazy schemes, but she doesn't have that level of vindictiveness in her." Aggy was halfway through a bite of pizza, a cheese string hanging from her mouth. "Huh?" "What did the letter say?" I asked. Grizzy entered the kitchen then and gave Missy and V one-armed hugs. "What are we talking about?" I explained about the mysterious pink letters, while Grizzy popped a cork on a bottle of wine and poured a glass for everyone except herself. "Breastfeeding," she said, and got herself a glass of sparkling water instead. "So, what did it say, Missy?" V sniffed and dissolved into tears. Missy patted her sister's arm. "That we don't belong in Sleepy Creek, that they know our secret and that everyone hates us." "Intriguing. I got a similar message, also vaguely worded about secrets and how I'm the worst private investigator to grace the face of the earth. Second time I've heard it today," I said. "Well, technically, it was the first. The second was Hardwick." "Ignore him," Grizzy said fiercely as she grabbed a slice of pizza. "He's just jealous of you, Chris. Arthur doesn't like him one bit. Apparently, he's a bit of a megalomaniac." "A bit," Missy snorted. "He's awful. He's got a real attitude. You can just tell he's Mona's nephew. But her words were interrupted by a furious banging. Chapter 5. "What was that?" Aggy hissed. "I believe that was someone knocking on the door," Missy replied. "I'll get it." I got up again, moving through the kitchen, frowning when that banging started up again. "Who is it?" I called out. We weren't expecting any other visitors. Our entire friend group, minus Arthur and Liam, was already in the kitchen. The knocking paused. "Hello? Who's out there?" Grizzy, Missy, and V all crowded into the living room, Aggy hot on their tails. The knocking started up again. I shook my head, then grabbed my purse from the living room sofa, rifled through it, and removed my taser. "Identify yourself," I yelled. Another pause in the banging, but no answer. 3, 2, 1. I yanked the door open, taser at the ready, and found a very damp-looking Mona Jonah on the front doorstep. She had scraped her pink sunglasses back onto her wet auburn hair, and she wore a leopard print blouse, matching heels, and her pink gossip circle jacket. Water dripped from her chin and nose, and her mascara had left dark tracks on her cheeks. "Mona?" She shook her head like a wet dog, then jerked it to one side. Water ran out of her left ear and onto the arm of her jacket. "What?" she yelled. "Mona, can you hear me?" She jerked her head to the other side, and water dribbled out of her right ear. "Mona?" "You," she said. Grizzy appeared beside me, bearing a tight smile. "Hello, Mona," she said. "Would you mind keeping it down? My baby is trying to sleep." "I have no concerns for your progeny," Mona snapped. "She got the word of the day toilet paper again," Missy said, peeking her head around the door. V's head appeared below her sister's. "Don't be ridiculous, Missy. She simply got a word of the day app on her phone." "Ugh," Mona said, and pulled a face. "Of course, all of you are here." "What do you want, Jonah?" I asked. "We're trying to enjoy a peaceful night." "And also, what happened to you?" Grizzy asked. "Do you need a towel?" "I won't take anything from you," Mona said. "You mean apart from the burgers that you buy from her diner every single morning?" Missy asked. "Milkshakes, too," V added in, helpfully. "I've been looking for you everywhere." Mona pointed at me, her red nail looking particularly dagger-like today. "I want to enlist your services." "That's going to be a hard no from me, Mona." I didn't trust it. She had her nephew as a detective in this town. If she needed help, she could talk to him, especially after what she'd put my friends through, what she'd put us all through. Mona was the gossip queen in town. The letters, no. Mona didn't need to write letters. She used word of mouth. She'd been the editor of the newspaper at one point as well. Letters were too covert to be her style. She liked to be outright with her insults and ruinous intent. "Listen to me, Watson," Mona said, taking a step forward and almost wedging the heel of her stiletto into the boards that lined the porch. "I've been looking for you everywhere. I even went to your darn house and tried to find you. I climbed over the back fence and fell into your darn pool." "We don't have a pool," I said. Mona's eyes flicked left and right. "You don't?" "No." "That would explain the screaming children then," Mona said. "Well, that's a relief. I thought you reproduced without my knowledge." "This has to be the strangest conversation I've ever had." "Tell me about it," Missy said. "Pinch me. Am I having a nightmare?" "Regardless," Mona continued, "I've searched high and low for you, and you are going to take my case." "What's this about, Mona?" I asked. "Some absolute idiot with shriveled raisins for brains is writing gossip letters and distributing them around town. They are trying to muscle in on my turf, and I won't stand for it," Mona said. "I want you to find out who it is and tell me." "Sorry, Mona," I said. "I don't have time for another case." And then I stepped away from the door and started closing it. "Please," Mona cried. "They're tarnishing the good name of gossip in this town. You've got to help me." "Ask your nephew, Mona," I said, and then I shut the door. That was crazy. As always, Aggy with her tiny cowboy hat was incapable of processing irony. We headed back to the kitchen and everyone took their seats. Grizzy frowned at me across the table. "You're really not going to help her." "Remember what happened the last time?" I asked. "The gratitude we got for that?" "She's right, Griselda. Mona is bad news." V was the more measured of the twins, so her saying Mona was bad news was a big deal. She'll only use Christie. "You're right," Grizzy said. "I just don't like to turn people away. I like to help." She was a kind-hearted person, and it was the reason we got on so well. She was soft, and I was there to look out for her and encourage her when things got rough. "I'm going to figure out who's sending those letters," I said, "but not so I can report back to Mona. She's done enough damage with her gossip, and she certainly doesn't need help spreading more of it." Missy pursed her lips. "I don't trust myself to speak. That woman brings out the worst in me." Aggy sighed. Everyone looked at her and she blushed. "Sorry," she said. "I was just thinking about that poor woman who died today. And after the burger, too." "Burger?" Missy and V asked in unison. I filled them in on Chell dying shortly after a bite of a Burger Bar burger. But there's no proof yet that it was poisoning. I want to see what the department comes out with. They'll have to make a statement at some point. And what? Missy had gone pale. What's wrong, Missy? I gave her that burger, Missy whispered. What? Missy took a sip of her wine, then blinked. This afternoon, V didn't feel like eating her burger. Remember we got 2 for takeout, Griselda? 2 garlic burger specials, Grizzy said. I remember. She gave me her burger and told me to eat it or give it away, Missy whispered. And Chell happened to have just come through the door at that point, so I gave it to her. Oh boy, I muttered. Oh boy. Chatter broke out around the table as the women discussed this new turn of events. Wait, I said, lifting a palm. So, Grizzy, you got the burger directly from Jarvis? That's right. I gave the burgers to V and Missy. Grizzy's eyes were round. And V, you didn't let that burger out of your sight until you gave it to Missy? V nodded, lips drawn into a thin line. And Missy, you gave it directly to Chell. Yeah. Then, I said, looking around the table at each of my friends, either it wasn't poisoning or someone poisoned that burger after you gave it to Chell. Either way, the police are going to question all of you, so you'd better get your stories straight. Chapter 6. Yesterday had been an interesting day, but then most days in Sleepy Creek were interesting. I wasn't a superstitious person, but this town had a way of attracting the weird, wonderful, and often the dangerous. I filled up my travel mug with coffee at the house, scratched my adorable cat, Poirot, under the chin, then headed for the door. Aggy hopped off the sofa to follow me, yapping away as we exited Liam's cozy house. My fiancé was already at the pizzeria, setting everything up, ensuring that the business ran smoothly and doing admin work. I was so proud of him for how far he'd come in the past few months. He'd gone from indecisive to getting the right spot for the pizzeria, preparing the place, hiring staff, and even launching the pizzeria within the span of a few months. He had worked himself to the bone. And I miss him. I shoved that thought away. I had to be happy for Liam and not jealous of the fact that we'd barely gotten time together in the past couple of months. What are we going to do today? Aggy asked. Chell mentioned that someone had been stealing from her, I replied as we got into my cherry red Corvette. We'll follow that lead, see if we can get anything from it, and then we'll try to track where she went with that burger before she came to see me at the office. How are we going to do that? By talking to people, I said, and started the engine. It purred to life, and I reversed it out of the driveway and spun it around in the street, tires screeching. I loved that about this car, the way it sounded and attracted attention, even if it was old and had given me loads of problems. We took the drive into town, passing the burger bar, always open in the mornings to serve breakfast burgers, its neon sign attracting attention out front. Grizzy had attached an extra sign right beside the door that bore a bright neon burger. I couldn't wait to stop by for lunch. The bookstore right next door was closed this morning, but that didn't matter for our investigation. This wasn't the bookstore Chell had mentioned yesterday. This one was more of an exchange, whereas the store that Chell had brought up was brand new and didn't take book trades. Ooh, somebody's going to play music, Aggy said. I slowed the car and looked around for what she was talking about. A woman wearing a glittering colored shawl was setting up a portable keyboard on the street corner. I parked a few spaces away from her, underneath one of the many trees that line the street, peeking out of beds on the sidewalk. She didn't glance up, but rooted around in an oversized tote. Do you know her, Christie? Aggy asked. No, I said, but look where she's setting up. On the corner. Correct, on the corner, right in view of the burger bar, I said. What do you think that means? That she wants to eat burgers? I resisted the urge to pinch the bridge of my nose for the millionth time this week. No, Agatha, it means that she might have seen our victim come out of the burger bar with that burger yesterday. She might have useful information. Oh. My fingers crept to my nose, and I snatched them back to the steering wheel. Listen to me, I said, turning to Agatha so that my leather seats squeaked. I need you to take notes while we talk, okay? I can do that. I got out of the Corvette, and Aggy followed me, already pulling her cute pink notepad and fluffy-tipped pen out of the satchel she'd strung over her shoulder. Practical. What wasn't practical was the oversized sun hat she'd chosen for the day. It was so big, she hit me in the temple whenever she turned her head. "Excuse me," I said, approaching the busker as she put down a small box to collect tips. "Oh, hi." She gave me a bright smile, flashing white teeth. "Sorry, I haven't started playing yet, but I should be set up in the next 10 minutes or so if you'd like to come back and request a song. Requests cost $5. "I actually had a couple questions for you," I said. "Questions?" She was pale, with freckles ranging over a sharp nose. She shifted a pair of owlish glasses and peered at me. "About what? My music?" "My name is Christie Watson," I said, removing a card from the pocket of my jeans and handing it over. "I'm a private investigator, and I'm currently working a case." "Okay, not sure how I can help?" "Were you set up on the street corner yesterday?" I asked. "Sure was," she said. "This spot is great since there are so many restaurants, bakeries, and bookstores around here." Liam's Pizzeria, slice of nice, was down the street, and 5th Street was the intersection over from this corner. 5th Street being where the new bookstore was located. "Did you happen to see a woman with gray hair come out of the burger bar yesterday? Sort of mean-looking, would have been carrying a takeout box." I'm not sure. There were a lot of people who came out of there yesterday," the woman said. "Here." Aggy held out her phone. "This is what she looks like." I caught a glimpse of Shell's face underneath a bolded headline. It had to be the online version of the Sleepy Creek Gazette, and I was impressed that my cousin had spent her spare time researching the case when she didn't have to. "Oh, this lady," the busker said. "Oh, yeah, I saw her." "You did?" "Sure," she said. "She came over here yesterday morning to complain about me busking. She asked if I had a permit, and when I told her I did, she demanded to see it. Of course, when I showed it to her, she got even angrier." That was in line with the way she'd behaved at my office. "Did you see which way she went after she talked to you? And was she holding a takeout box from the burger joint?" "Yeah, she was. She kept gesturing with it," the busker said. "Afterward, she went off in that direction, turned off down that street." "And that was the last time you saw her?" I asked. "Nope. She passed by me again like a half an hour later, I think, heading in that direction." She pointed down the intersection in the direction of my office, and she still had the box. "She did, yeah. Is that headline right?" The busker gestured toward the phone. "She's dead?" "Murdered," Aggy said, and whatever points I'd given her for extra research evaporated. "Allegedly." I cast a furious glance at my cousin. "What's your name, by the way?" "Sapphire," she said. "Sapphire Blaze. It's so nice to make your acquaintance." She bowed her head. "I hope you'll stop by later to make a request." "We might just. Thanks for your time, Sapphire." I removed a couple of dollars from my purse and put them in her box, then gestured for Aggy to follow me back to the car. I had to read that article, and then it was time for a visit to that bookstore. It felt good to be useful, but I was concerned about the town and about Hardwick's inability to set aside his differences and investigate the case. Sleepy Creek needed our protection now more than ever. Chapter 7. Even though Mona Jonah was no longer the editor of the paper, the writing was still as inflammatory and dramatic as it had been under her leadership. I swayed back and forth in my office chair, reading the article on my cell phone. "We should really get a desktop computer," Aggy said. "I think that would be a great investment." Aggy had removed her sun hat to reveal a kink in her hair that encircled her head, flattening the top section against her scalp. When we have the funds," I said. My laptop was broken, so that was officially out. I was just glad we had a new desk and that the air conditioning, a new addition, worked. Step by step, I was gathering a foothold in this town. But what about what Shell said? A new private investigator in town? Surely not. But we could do a fundraiser. We could wash cars in our bikinis. That's going to be an absolutely not from me, I said. Now give me a second to read this darn article, will you? Local woman dies in private investigator's office. Can the cops solve the case? Sleepy Creek, Ohio. A local woman, Chell Hamilton, dropped dead under suspicious circumstances yesterday, with the police unwilling to comment on the cause of death. In another shocking turn for Sleepy Creek, the death occurred at the offices of once respected homicide detective turned private investigator Christie Watson. Watson was unavailable for comment. Liars. Chell Hamilton, known for her scrapbooking store, Chell's Scrapbooking Adventures, was an active member of Sleepy Creek, a citizen who attended all the town hall meetings. In fact, Mayor Sampson expressed his sadness for her passing and has called for Sleepy Creek citizens to stand together as one in this trying time. It's with grief that I have to make this statement about the passing of Miss Chell Hamilton, who brought joy to our town with her books, trinkets, and stickers. She will be sorely missed. Citizens of Sleepy Creek, we need to stand together against the rising crime in our town, love each other, protect each other. We are working closely with police to figure out what has happened. At this time, we're unsure of whether this was natural causes or a terrible accident. That made zero sense. The mayor had talked about the rising tide of crime, then promptly said that this may have been natural causes. Mayor Sampson had always been a pain in my behind. He'd held back information from me, particularly as it pertained to the cameras that had been set up around Sleepy Creek. There was no point asking him for those recordings now. He wouldn't give it to me. While the local police department, the sheriff, and the detectives investigating what happened have yet to comment, we will stop at nothing to discover the truth about what happened to Miss Hamilton. We'll be publishing live updates on our social media platforms. Be sure to follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. I locked my phone screen and set it to one side. Good work, Aggy. I should have checked the Gazette's website first thing this morning. Thanks, Christie. Aggy's cheeks pinked. I felt bad for her. Aggy had waited so long she'd help me investigate, when all she really wanted was to have her own bakery. Hopefully it would happen soon enough. I took out my yellow legal pad and started making quick notes about the case. The busker, Sapphire, had witnessed Chell head toward 5th Street. My bet was that she'd gone into the new bookstore to confront Layla, who she'd been sure was stealing from her. That was our first lead. My intercom buzzed and Aggy straightened and set her sun hat back on her head, arranging herself in case of visitors. I hit the button. Mindy? There's a guy here. What's your name? A pause. He says his name is Walton Hallmilton. You want me to let him in? Yes, please, Mindy. Suit yourself, but he looks like kind of a weirdo. Mindy, can you not insult potential clients? I asked. At least not when they're in earshot. Okay, sure. But that's like a major inconvenience for me. And then she cut out. Get the door, will you, Aggy? I asked. My cousin jumped up and opened my office door, with its misted pane, letting in Mr. Hamilton. A relation of Chell's? He was a short man with gray hair, his face rotund, and a wisp of a mustache seated over a quivering, thin top lip. You're the private investigator? He stuck out a pudgy hand. I rose from my chair, and we shook over my desk. I am, I said. Take a seat. Aggy shut the door and took her place on the corner stool, notepad at the ready. I wasn't sure I was in the right place, Mr. Hamilton said. "Apparently, there's more than one private investigator in this town." It was the second time I'd heard that, and once I was done with this case, I would have to find out exactly who was muscling in on my turf. "You've come to the right place, Mr. Hamilton," I said. "I assume you're related to Chell?" "I'm her brother," he said, then bowed his head and gave it a little shake. I was her brother. I actually only found out that we were related recently. I came to town to meet her, and the day after we talked for the first time, face to face, she was gone. I'm struggling to reconcile my emotions. There are so many conflicting feelings, and I just honestly want to know what's going on. "Have you talked to the police?" "I tried talking to Detective Hardwick," Walton said, and his jaw clenched, "but he gave me nothing. He basically told me to get lost, but Detective Cotton was kinder about it. He said I should come see you, that you might be able to help." Bless Arthur for that. "I can help, Mr. Hamilton. What do you want to know?" "I want to know what happened to my sister, who killed her, and why," he said firmly. "And the sooner you can get the job done, the better, because I have to leave town and head back to Boston soon." "You're from Boston?" I asked. Small world. I had lived there before I'd moved back to my hometown. "That's right," he said. "This has been a nice sabbatical from work." My insides twisted. A sabbatical was what I'd taken years ago. This was hitting close to home in a strange way. "I'll help you, Mr. Hamilton. I do charge a small fee, of course, but whatever you need me to pay, I'll pay it. I want the truth, Miss Watson, and I want it now." Chapter 8. I was inspired by the way Mr. Hamilton had talked about his sister. If I'd died under suspicious circumstances, I'd have wanted a friend or family member to act the way he had. Regardless, he'd made my suspect list. Walton Hamilton, Layla, the bookstore owner, and the busker, Sapphire? What about her? She might have had a motive after Chell had bothered her, and Sapphire was definitely new to Sleepy Creek, suspiciously new. I found it difficult to keep my paranoia at bay, simply because of everything I'd been through in the past. From the now-defunct Somerville Spiders gang who had operated out of Boston and wanted me dead, to the CIA agent who had come to warn me about my cousin being in danger. It paid to check corners and stay suspicious of newcomers. Ironic, since I had hated how the town had been so insulated against out-of-towners when I'd first arrived. Aggy and I spent the morning researching our suspects. Hamilton had zero online presence, apart from a brief mention that he worked at a genetic laboratory on his LinkedIn profile. Layla, however, had spent years working in the publishing industry, only to retire to Sleepy Creek to start up her library. And she had several social media accounts that were active and which she posted on regularly. Before lunch, we piled into the Corvette and took the quick drive to the bookstore, passing Sapphire, who was still on the corner, playing on the keyboard and singing into a microphone on a stand. Aggy rolled down her window, and the sounds of music drifted in. Sapphire wasn't half bad. We parked outside the bookstore, Layla's bookish nook, and got out to admire the place. Windows stretched up to the sign above, allowing in plenty of light and showcasing wooden bookcases stocked with titles and a central reading area with cream wing-backed armchairs, a matching throw rug, and a coffee table with a potted plant. It had an airy open vibe that was nothing like the Exchange next to the burger bar. Both had their merits, of course. I loved the tight coziness of the bookstore next to Grizzy's place. We entered and approached the front counter where a woman with short pink hair was tapping away on the computer. I envied the flat screen. "Hi there," I said. "Oh, hello." The woman looked up and gave a bob of her head. Zero smile. "What can I help you with?" "I'm looking for Layla Karsten," I said. "Have you seen her around?" Okay, who's asking?" "I'm Christie Watson," I said. "This is my assistant, Aggy. I'm a private investigator doing some research on a case, and I believe Miss Karsten might be able to help me." The woman gnawed on the corner of her mouth. "Is this about Shell?" "It is," I said. "Are you Layla?" "I am." She sighed and placed her palm on the counter, leaning against it with a resigned expression on her face. "Look, I've already talked to the cops, and there's nothing more I have to say." "Let me guess," I said. "Detective Hardwick interviewed you?" "Yeah. How did you know?" "He leaves a trail of destruction in his wake," I said. "Yeah," Aggy echoed, and turned her head, whapping me in the temple with that ridiculously oversized sun hat. I shut my eyes for a second, then turned to my cousin. "Do me a favor and run down to the burger bar to put in our order early, will you? But I don't have the keys to the Corvette." I loved my cousin, in my own way, but there was zero chance I was about to give her the keys to my baby. I wouldn't let anyone except Liam or Griselda drive it. "It would be great if you could walk, Aggy," I said. "Grab yourself an extra milkshake." "Ooh, yum." She hurried toward the front door, her wedges clacking on the polished wooden floor. "Sorry," I said. "We were talking about Detective Hardwick." "Yeah, he was rude," Layla said. "I didn't appreciate his tone or the way he insinuated I was involved." "He has a gift," I said. "Or a curse, depending on how you look at it." For the first time since I'd entered the bookstore, Layla cracked a smile. "You're right about that. He was real disappointed when I told him that I wasn't even in the store yesterday." "The bookstore," I clarified. "Right. I was at home. I had a migraine yesterday, so I decided not to come in. I had my assistant handle everything, and she told me that around 11:30 Shell came in looking for me. I'm glad I missed her, honestly. She's been insufferable lately. She's convinced that I've been stealing from her." "Stealing what?" "Washi tape, stickers." Layla patted the display next to the cash register. The clear plastic holder held rolls and rolls of brightly colored washi tape, each one with different prints. "But I have my own stock. I have no need to steal from anybody, and it's not like they're great sellers anyway." She was obsessive about it. Kept sending me messages. Gosh, she even wrote me a threatening letter. "She did?" "Yeah, on pink stationery, covered in this cheap-smelling perfume." "Do you still have the letter?" I asked. "No. I had to give it to Hardwick. Anyway, it doesn't matter because I am officially cleared of wrongdoing in her death, since I wasn't even here yesterday." And that meant one thing. The burger had definitely been poisoned. There was no other reason that she would be cleared by her absence in the store. "I really didn't like her," Layla said. "But not liking someone isn't enough to want to murder them. That's just insane." I nodded. "What was the name of your assistant?" "Harriet," she said. "I can give you her number if you're interested." "That would be great." "Thank you." I grabbed the number from Layla, then headed for the Corvette. I'd have to get hold of Harriet and ask her about what had happened when Shell had come in. But there was more to this. The letters. These strange letters kept cropping up. Who was writing them, and why? Had it been Shell? I had received one, the twins too, and then there was Mona, who'd freaked out at the idea that anyone would spread gossip or vitriol better than she did. And now Layla as well. Were the letters connected somehow, or had more people received them? If I could get a sample of Chelle's handwriting, that would be first prize. I was certain it wasn't Aggy who'd sent them. I'd already compared her original letter to the one I'd received, and the handwriting was different. I started the Corvette's engine and drove over to the burger bar, frowning as I passed Sapphire, who was wailing out a song I didn't recognize and had already gathered a crowd of sleepy creakers. I parked outside the burger bar, pondering as I headed inside. The little bell tinkled overhead, but the quaint sound was overridden by raised voices. "I'll make you pay for this," a woman yelled. " Chapter 9. Mona Jonah stood in the center of the burger bar, drawing every eye, as was her specialty. She held her pink sunglasses in one hand, the other hand balled into a fist and raised in the face of the woman across from her. The woman was none other than Esther Gray, who was a recent addition to Sleepy Creek and who had once been a part of the gossip circle, as far as I could recall. Except she wasn't wearing the leopard print, stilettos, and pink jacket of the circle today. No, instead she wore plaid, a gray jacket and bright red lipstick, her blonde hair done up in fountains of curls. She looked fabulous, if a little overdone, and she grinned at Mona. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Get out of here," Mona said. "Get out." "I can't, I'm afraid. I'm currently hosting a meeting of the rumor crew. The girls and I are hungry, and you don't own this place, so—" Esther was much younger than Mona, in her 20s, and she gestured over her shoulder to a group of women who wore similar plaid outfits, with denim skirts and gray jackets. "The what?" Mona asked. Esther did a fancy twirl and posed, showing off the back of her gray jacket. The words, "The Rumor Crew," were printed across the back in rhinestones. Mona made a noise in her throat that was halfway between gagging and choking. Nearby, my cousin sat with Missy and V, wide-eyed, 2 milkshakes on the table in front of her. Grizzy held a tub of ice cream behind the counter at the back, also staring. Every eye in the burger bar was on the altercation. Usually Grizzy put a stop to these kinds of shenanigans, but I didn't blame her for letting this one run its course. This kind of action drew in customers, and Grizzy had given up on chasing Mona and her gossip circle out of the diner. Esther spun to face Mona again. "What's the matter, Mona? Can't handle a little healthy competition?" "It's you, isn't it?" Mona growled out the words. "You're the one who's been sending everyone those vile letters." "Me?" Esther patted her chin with a fingertip that ended in a sharp black fingernail. "As if I need to do that to do my job." She clapped twice and struck a pose. "Or haven't you heard, Mona? I'm the newest columnist at the Sleepy Creek Gazette." Another series of choked noises from Mona. "You should have been kinder to me, Mona. You should have thought twice before you decided to kick me out of the gossip circle," she said. "Because guess what? You created a monster. A fabulous one." "You're insane," Mona snapped. "Oh, you. Talk about garlic breath." Esther covered her nose and backed up 2 steps on her chunky boots. "I can tell you've already had your lunch, girl." "You better get out of here before I make you regret it," Mona said, but her voice was shaky. "My girls will be here any second, and if you and your copycat crew aren't gone by then, there's going to be a war." "Bring it on." Esther lifted her chin. The other rumor crew members stood and glared at Mona, folding their arms, a few of them striking poses that gave me a healthy dose of secondhand cringe. What in the world was going on in this town? I'd gone from a quaint independent bookstore and walked in on this. "You'd better back down," Mona said. "Unlike you, I don't need cute letters to get the job done." "You keep accusing me of writing those letters, when we all know it was you. Seriously. Pink, perfumed." The bell rang over the door and several Gossip Circle members entered the burger bar, their heels clacking as they walked over to join Mona. "What's going on?" One of the members stopped next to Mona and placed a hand on her arm. Mona jerked free. "Nothing." "All right," Grizzy said. "That's enough of a show. You two can quiet down and enjoy your meals in peace, or you can leave my establishment." Both Mona and Esther turned toward Grizzy, opening their mouths. "If you don't, I'll call the police and they can remove you. I'm sure that will be enough gossip to go around," Grizzy said. Both women sniffed, but Esther took her seat with her girls. "It's fine, ladies. We'll share the space for now, but the real Sleepy Creekers know who runs this town." "Mona, what's going on? Who is she?" The Gossip Circle members crowded around Mona, and finally they took a booth right behind Missy and V's. Whoever had written those letters had stirred the pot, but were the letters related to the murder? I waved to Grizzy, then headed over to the twins' booth and scooched in beside Missy, across from Aggy. My cousin nudged a basket of fries and a burger over, and I bit into this week's special, the garlic burger, enjoying the flavor burst across my tongue. "Good to see you, Christie," V said. "Things were starting to get crazy when you arrived. I have no clue what spurred this on." "I believe they call it karma, sister," Missy said, not bothering to keep her voice down. "Jonah's been spreading her vitriol in this town for long enough. Now there are competitors." "Everyone wants power," I said. "Some people just aren't that worried about who they step on to get it." That sent silence around the table, and the gossip circle members were surprisingly muted behind us. Usually they brimmed with rumors and news, but they ate in silence today, clearing their throats or casting looks over at the other table. Meanwhile, the rumor crew, run by Esther, laughed and joked around, nudging each other and frequently sending glances in Mona's direction. It was an interesting dynamic. Mona and Esther both wanted to know about the letters. They didn't like the thought that anyone else in town might wrest control from them. The truth was, in Sleepy Creek, public opinion mattered a lot. I had felt that when I'd first arrived. Grizzy had experienced it after she'd had run-ins with Mona, and the same was true for the twins. No one was immune, and the letter writer was throwing the balance off. "Has anyone else received a letter?" I asked the twins. "Anyone you know of, apart from us and Mona?" "Dolores from the bakery," V said instantly. "She complained about it to me this morning when I fetched my croissants. Nigel from the florist shop, and Bethany from the bookstore next door. The exchange," Missy said. "Mindy got one." Aggy's words were a surprise. "She did?" I asked. "You asked her?" "She mentioned it to me this morning," Aggy said. "We talk sometimes." "You do? You can get her to talk to you?" "Yeah, we text, and we also send each other bumps in the game we're playing. Dink the Dinkum." Aggy lifted her phone and showed a colorful screen. She popped a few bubbles on it, and the words, "High Score," flashed across it in rainbow colors. I descended into another silence. So then, it wasn't just the main players in the case who had received these letters. Someone was sending hate mail out en masse. But who? And why? And did it have anything to do with Shelley's death? Chapter 10. Aggy and I drove back to the office together, her chatting about hats and what she'd wear tomorrow, and me pondering the case, belly full of burgers, fries, and milkshakes. Nobody could accuse me of having a healthy diet, but the stress was enough to keep me trim. I had other cases to work, missing necklaces, and the occasional lost cell phone, but none of them were urgent, and my focus was purely on what had happened to Chell. I didn't take kindly to the fact that someone had decided to murder a citizen of this town, even if Chell had been a bit sharp around the edges. Mindy wasn't at the front desk, likely taking one of her infamous extended lunches and salon breaks, and I entered my office with Aggy on my tail, already pulling my phone out of my pocket. "So, you see," Aggy said, "I really do think that the Stetson suits me the best. Don't you think?" "Sure. And the name of the bakery could be Cowboys and Cookies." She gasped. "Oh, that's good. Or Cowboys and Cupcakes. Cowboys and cream." "Huh?" I tapped on my phone screen. "Cowboys and cream, like cookies and cream, except the cookie has a cowboy hat over the top." "Oh my gosh, Christie, that's perfect." Aggy clapped her hands and bobbled up and down on the spot. "That's the best idea you've ever had." I let my cousin daydream about her bakery while I typed out Harriet's number, grateful that Layla had been willing to offer it up. Harriet answered on the second ring. Seriously. "Hello, Harriet?" "You interrupted me in the middle of a high-score round," Harriet said, and she sounded so much like Mindy. I dragged the phone away from my ear to check I hadn't called my receptionist instead. Sorry, I said. I just wanted a moment of your time. Look, I don't know what you're selling, but unless it's a t-shirt that says #1 Dink the Dinkum Player, then I don't want to hear about it. I'm calling in connection with the death of Chell Hamilton. That shut her up. Nothing like shock factor to get people to listen. Oh, she said. Is this Harriet? Yes, it's Harriet, she said. Sorry, I didn't realize it was the cops calling. I'm a private investigator, not a cop, I said. But the family of the deceased has hired me to look into what happened to her. I trust you'll keep that information confidential. Technically, it didn't matter if she kept it quiet or not. Hardwick was bound to find out. That's so totally weird, Harriet said. You're the second private investigator who's called me this week. Okay. What the heck is going on here? May I ask who the first one was? Some guy, I don't remember his name. I blew past it. The mystery of the competitor would have to wait for later. Harriet, I said, I have it on good authority that you were working at the bookstore yesterday when Chell Hamilton came in before noon. Yeah, that's right, she said. I was working. She came in and she was kind of like mean. Like really mean. She kept demanding to see Layla, but I kept telling her that Layla wasn't around. And then she knocked over the washi tape stand. It was crazy. She was holding a burger box, correct? Yeah, Harriet said. Smelled amazing. I was so hungry I was tempted to take a bite. Kidding, I don't do burgers. Too many trans fats. Sure, I said. Did Chell put down the burger box at any point? There was a quiet on the other side of the call. Yeah, she put it down to knock over the washi, and then I had to pick it up while she stood over me. It was wild. I was getting super upset about it. But then I figured, she's old, so she's got nothing better to do. Little bit of casual ageism. I don't think age has anything to do with it, I said, then shook my head at myself for getting offended. The twins would give Harriet a run for her money. Harriet had confirmed that the takeout box had been unattended during those moments in the bookstore, which meant that whoever had poisoned Chell had likely done it then. But that was so specific. They had to have been following Chell, waiting for the moment to strike, which made the murderer ever scarier. This was premeditated. Are there cameras in the bookstore, Harriet? Nope. Layla's going to get some installed, though. She thinks I've been stealing the stickers. Stickers have been going missing from the store? I asked. That's what Layla says, but every time I've done stock take, everything's been there. One last question, Harriet, I said. Sure, go ahead. I've already lost my streak. Were there other people in the store when Chell was in there? And if so, who were they? There were a couple of people in there, she said. There was a guy, this sort of short, overweight guy with gray hair, a woman with blonde hair and this fabulous gray jacket. And then there was, oh my gosh, Mona Jonah came in just as Chell knocked the washi tape stand over. 3 instant suspects, Mona Jonah, Esther Gray, Walton Hamilton himself. Anyone else? Let me think for, a second. A sigh. No. Nobody was in there that I could see, but then it's not like I was paying that much attention. It's a bookstore, so people come in and browse all the time. There might have been someone in the back. I'd have to bear that in mind. But for now, I had 3 main suspects who had been there. Layla claimed she'd been at home, but that didn't mean she was telling the truth. She had the keys to the store. Was there a back entrance to the bookstore? I asked. I thought you were done with the questions, Harriet whined. Last one, I said. Ugh, fine. Yeah, there's one at the back, but we barely ever use it. Thanks for your time, Harriet. But she'd already hung up, likely to get back to her game. Aggy sat on the stool in the corner, tapping away at her screen, her eyes wide. I could almost see the dopamine floating through her brain. Et tu, Agatha, I muttered. Huh? Nothing. I sat at my desk, steepling my fingers and considering. The letters, the suspects. First on my agenda would be to identify who had been closest to that front desk, but without information, that would be impossible to figure out. And it seemed that Harriet had been preoccupied during the moment when the poisoning had taken place. Then I had to get statements from the others. It was simple enough. If one of them was contradictory, it would give me a lead. Then I just had to connect the poison to the person in question, assuming I could figure out what type of poison had been used. If only the darn department would release a statement. I shot off a text to Arthur. Time to talk? I don't know, Christie. I might get in a lot of trouble for talking to you. I was on my own. That was fine. I preferred to work solo anyway. In the corner, Aggy let out a squeal of delight, kicked her feet, and almost fell off her stool. Chapter 11. My contacts had informed me that Esther Gray, the head of the newly founded Rumor Crew, lived on Disaster Lane, a street that had houses on one side facing a grassy knoll and a play park for kids. Interestingly, Miss Gray, who lived alone according to my research, was neighbors with none other than our victim, Chell. For a lane named Disaster, the houses lining it sure were cute. Shiplap walls, wraparound porches with neatly kept front yards, and rose bushes that were slowly losing their vigor as we headed into fall. They looked as if they'd been copy-pasted next to each other. Kids shrieked and played in the park, their nannies or mothers watching over them, and the end of the lane ended in a cul-de-sac. Aggy played on her phone in the passenger seat of my Corvette, occasionally glancing up to look out of the windshield. Is this a good idea, Christie? Is what a good idea? Coming here, Aggy said. To see this woman. She looked kind of scary in the burger bar. Seriously, Aggy said. You saw the way Mona acted yesterday. She was terrified of her. She was furious. I don't know if I'd call it being terrified, I said. And regardless, we need to find out where she was in the bookstore and why she was there. She's only the first on our list. We're going to talk to Walton and Mona, too. Aggy shut off her phone and pulled a face. She was back to her old Stetson today, likely because of our conversation the other day, and she dragged the tip down to shade her face and sank low in her seat. Do I have to get out of the car? I need you to look for anything I don't see. It's going to be easier for you to pick up on Esther's mannerisms since you won't have to ask any questions. And Aggy knew this. She wasn't cut out for investigative work. She tried, but it wasn't fair to expect her to be brilliant at it. I'd take competent. Aggy didn't voice any further complaints as I parked the Corvette in front of 11 Disaster Lane. I got out, shifting my sunglasses on my face as I studied both Esther's house and Shell's nearly identical one beside it. The major difference was that Shell's curtains were drawn shut, and the house was silent, whereas Esther's place was full of light, the door thrown open, the windows too, the sounds of pop music spilling out into the morning air. Aggy bobbed her head along to the song, crooning off-key. See? Nothing to worry about, I said, grinning at her. I headed up to the house, opening a picket gate and taking a brick path to the front steps. I was just about to knock on the open front door when Esther skidded into the hall on a pair of white socks, dancing with her phone in hand and singing tunelessly. Esther, I said. She didn't hear me over the sound of her stereo. Her eyes were closed, and she spun in a circle, wiggling her hips and yelling to the song. Esther, I yelled. Nothing. S! Her eyes opened and her gaze landed on us. She let out a scream and threw her phone up, then made a panicked grab for it, juggling it until she got a hold of it again. What the? Esther charged toward us. What the heck are you doing? Trying to give you a heart attack, apparently, I said over the noise. Esther rolled her eyes and turned around. Alexa, switch off the music. The sound cut out and she turned to us again. What are you doing here? We don't know each other well, she said. My name is Christie Watson. I'm a local private investigator, Esther said. Yeah, I know. Mona told me all about you when I was part of the gossip circle. You're relatively new to town, right? I asked. Yeah, moved here like 6 months ago. And then you joined the gossip circle? Joined? More like inducted, she said. Mona didn't take no for an answer, and then she kicked, "You know what? Why am I even answering these questions? What do you want?" "To talk to you about your next-door neighbor, Chell?" Esther's mouth turned down at the corners. "Oh yeah, right, Chell. I heard about that. That's messed up." Messed up wasn't even the start of it. "Do you have a minute to talk?" I asked. "I'm investigating a case that's related to her murder, some petty theft at her scrapbooking store." "Why? Isn't she, you know?" "Her brother asked me to help out." "Oh yeah," Esther shrugged. "I don't really have time for questions, but—" "Think of it this way," I said, while Aggy shifted next to me, peering out at Esther from underneath the brim of her hat. "You scratch my back, and I'll scratch yours." Esther stepped out onto the porch, casting glances up and down the street. "All right, I'll bite," she said. "What kind of scratching are we talking about here?" "Depends what you want to know," I said. "Mona's pretty good at spreading rumors and controlling the narrative in this town. It's going to be tough to beat her at her own game, if you catch my meaning." Esther gnawed on the corner of her lip. "I can do it." "I'm sure you can," I said, "but there's no shame in having a little extra help." Of course, I had no intention of getting involved in a feud between two gossip-mongering women, but she didn't need to know that. "All right, sure," she said. "You tell me something about Mona I don't know, and I'll help you out." "Mona," I said, "is secretly married to a billionaire." "You are kidding," Esther said. "A billionaire?" "Sure is. That would give her something to chew on, and it was a positive rumor, so it wasn't like I'd said anything bad about Mona, even though she didn't deserve my protection." "That is wild," Esther said. "Seriously wild." She walked to the swing seat and lowered herself onto it, staring directly ahead. "Wow." "Now," I said, "I wanted to ask you about the day Chell passed. On Monday, apparently, you were at the bookstore." "Huh?" Esther shook her head as if to clear it and looked up at me, her green eyes bright and round. "Which bookstore?" "The new one," I said. "Run by Layla? You were there around noon. I wanted to ask if you saw anyone suspicious hanging around in the—" "I'm going to stop you right there," she said, lifting her palm. "I wasn't at the bookstore. I don't know who told you that, but they were lying. I was literally at home. I had a meeting with my boss at that time. We get to work from home on the days we're not needed at the office." "Right," I said. "Okay." So either Harriet had lied or there had been another woman from the rumor crew in the library. "What are the names of the rumor crew members?" "Excuse me?" "The names." "I think it's time for you to leave," she said. "I don't know if you're trying to play Mona's little spy or not, but I don't trust you. Go." And then Esther got up, sweeping an imperious gaze over me, then Aggy before she entered her house and slammed the door. "Well," I said, "that went swimmingly." "What do we do now?" Aggy asked. "We visit the next person on the list." Chapter 12. Technically, the next person on the list was Walton, so I gave him a call and asked to meet him at the burger bar for lunch. In the meantime, I took a quick drive down to Chell's scrapbooking adventures and was surprised to find the place open. "Hey, cool," Aggy said, tapping on her window. "They've got a pink display. Oh my gosh, I have to get that stapler." "For what?" I asked. "You know," Aggy said, "stapling." "I have never seen you staple a thing in the entire time you've been in Sleepy Creek." "That doesn't mean I won't need one. Better to have a stapler and not need it than have a stapler and not need it." "Do you hear yourself?" But Aggy had rolled down her window to peek out at the other displays in the windows of the brick building that bore the store's cheery sign. Ooh, and a blue dolphin display. I love dolphins. What is this, the 90s? I muttered. The assistant inside, a young woman in a preppy white-collared t-shirt, was pricing things and doing stocktake. I was tempted to go in and talk to her, ask her about the thefts that had occurred at the store, but there wasn't any time. It would have to wait until another day. I wasn't sure that the thefts were linked to the death, and I had to follow the leads I had before I decided to divert my attention. Time for lunch. Oh, Aggy moaned. Can we come back afterward? After we chat to Mona, we can come back. Not Mona. Aggy's whine was on the verge of bringing on a migraine, so I started the Corvette up again and took the drive over to the burger bar before it got any worse. Inside, Missy and V were in their favorite booth, comfy on the red vinyl seats with their burgers and fries in front of them. They appeared to be in the middle of a whispered discussion, and Aggy hurried over to join them. I held up a 2 to Grizzy, indicating that I wanted 2 of our regular orders, 2 specials of the week with milkshakes and fries, and she gave me a grin in return and a thumbs up. Walton waited for me at a center table, already sipping on his milkshake and picking at a basket of fries. I scraped a chair back and sat down across from him. Thanks for meeting with me on such short notice, Mr. Hamilton. No problem, he said. I'll do whatever I can to figure out who killed my sister. That's good to hear. Walton was paler than I remembered, and he swiped a neatly folded napkin over his top lip, his fingers trembling. The sooner you figure this out, the sooner I can... Look, I'm going to tell you something that I don't want you to share. You can rest assured that whatever you tell me won't leave this room. Meaning, I'd probably still tell Grizzy, Aggy, Missy, and V, but only because they were a huge help in my investigations. They tended to see things I didn't. Okay, Walton said and released a breath. I got fired from my job before I came out here. That money I sent to you was about a quarter of what I have left in my bank account. I really, really need you to solve this case, Miss Watson. Why's that? Because my sister recently took out life insurance and I'm the one who will benefit from it, Walton said. You realize that makes you incredibly suspicious, Mr. Hamilton. I know, he said, waving a hand, fingers greasy from the fries. I know, but the truth is I didn't do anything to Chell. I didn't even know she'd taken out that life insurance policy until after she died. I found the documents in her home, and the police obviously think I have something to do with this. I lost my sister, but she made sure that I would be cared for once she was gone. So he had been fired. He stood to benefit from her death, and I've reopened her store so that it can continue making money, Walton said. I've always wanted my own business, and Chell would have wanted her scrapbooking store to stay open so that the people of this town can benefit from it. She loved Sleepy Creek. When we first started talking, she insisted that this was the best place to live. I'm sorry for your loss. Another wave of his hand. All I'm saying is that if you can't solve the case, then I can't get the money, and I won't be able to afford to stay here or anywhere. I hear you, Mr. Hamilton. I understand what you're saying, but I do need you to answer some questions for me. They'll help me solve the case quicker. I'll do anything I can to help. He dabbed his top lip again, but he looked relieved. It wasn't often one of my suspects admitted to things that made them even more suspicious. Was Walton trying to throw me off his scent? Or was he genuinely innocent? Was he sharing just enough so that I was set at ease? I'd follow the clues rather than trust what was being said. Still, it didn't make sense for him to hire me to investigate unless he thought I wouldn't catch him. But that would be a waste of his funds. Funds that were fast running out. I heard that you were at the bookstore on Monday. Layla's Bookish Nook. At around noon. No, doesn't ring a bell, sorry. All right, I said. So where were you on Monday afternoon? I had just gotten to town a couple of days before, so I was resting, he said. Where are you staying, Mr. Hamilton? I asked. In a local guest house or inn? No, I've been sleeping in my RV. I drove it across the country to get here, from Boston. I recalled him telling me about Boston. And you parked that RV where? Wherever I feel like it. I didn't want to impose on Shell, so I didn't ask to stay with her. I figured it would be weird for her long-lost brother to come over and expect her to have a sofa ready. Not as weird as her taking out a life insurance policy that benefited him. So, you were in your RV on Monday afternoon? Probably. Heck, I might have even been here in the burger bar. This is one of the best places in town apart from that new pizza place. I hid my smile. Liam's Pizzeria was doing great. So, you were here on Monday afternoon, I asked. Yeah, I think so. Look, I can't remember. Everything's been kind of a blur since Shell passed, and I'm struggling to keep it together. He ate another fry, chewing noisily. And Shell talked to you about the theft at the scrapbooking store. Oh yeah, she complained about it endlessly, he said with a rueful smile. But you know what? I've got my assistant at the store working on stock take. I'll figure out what's going on. Don't worry. You just stick to figuring out what happened to my sister. Chapter 13. I'd lost my appetite after the talk with Walton. The blood had rushed to my brain as I struggled to put the pieces together and figure out what was going on. Aggy had no such issues. She drank her milkshake, ate all her fries, and eyed my meal until I got it put into a takeout box for later. After lunch, I drove back to the office, passing that busker, Sapphire, on the way. She spotted us and waved, singing an Adele song as she did, which was brave, since who the heck could do Adele justice except for Adele herself? I parked outside the office and Aggy hopped out immediately, but I stayed put. My cousin peeked back into the car. Christie, are you coming? She asked. I need to pay Mona a visit, I said. Oh, okay, good luck with that. And then Aggy darted off before I could call her back. I let it slide. She wasn't any help around Mona anyway. She was too scared of her. Mona Jonah, the one and only, the killer of hopes and dreams, had a couple of hangout spots around Sleepy Creek. One was the Gossip Circle's headquarters, which operated almost like a sorority and was the base of operations for their club. Mona funded the whole thing herself, which would lend credence to the billionaire husband rumor. She had lived a charmed life and had plenty of money to invest in personal endeavors. Her personal endeavor in this case happened to be ruining other people's lives with gossip. I'd often wondered who'd hurt Mona enough to turn her into the gossip queen of Sleepy Creek, but she'd sooner start another rumor about me than answer that question. I swung by the Gossip Circle headquarters, a fancy double story with its doors thrown open, but Mona's pink SUV wasn't parked outside, so I drove past the burger bar again. Not there either. Finally, I headed toward the Sleepy Creek Park, with its ponds, pretty trees, their leaves turning orange and red, and winding paths. Mona and two of her Gossip Circle members sat on a bench under a tree, their heads close together, likely plotting Esther Gray's fall from social grace, or trying to. Esther was a smart woman. I parked the Corvette, headed through the open wrought iron gates of the park, and walked over to Mona and her girls. No, Mona said the minute she laid eyes on me. Absolutely not. Get lost, Watson. And it's a pleasure to see you too, Mona, I replied. Do you have a minute to talk? I just made it amply clear that I have no interest in talking to you. I thought you wanted me to figure out who'd been sending that hate mail, I said. That gave her pause. She glanced left and right at the two women either side of her, both young, likely in their late 20s, early 30s, and both staring at her like she was the cheese to their burger patty. Ladies, give me a moment with Watson, she said. I'm going to give her a piece of my mind. Of course, Mona. The first woman got up and scurried off, the other one following close behind her, bobbing her head in deference. You really are the gossip queen, huh? I gestured to the curtsying and scraping. Glad you finally realized it. Personally, I said, taking a seat beside her on the bench and drawing my dark hair into a high ponytail. It's not something I'd be proud of, but that's the difference between you and me. Yeah, I'm popular and you're not. Not what I'd have gone for, but whatever. Mona wet her lips and glanced at the women who had stopped near the pond and were tossing stones into the water. It was a funny sight. The Gossip Circle members, in their pink jackets and sunglasses, their stilettos and jeans, tossing stones into the water. I already know who was sending those letters. You do? I asked. Of course, Mona said. It's Esther. She's been trying to throw me off her scent, but it was her. She stole that paper and used it to wreak havoc. And you're getting this information from where exactly? That's my business. Mona had a smug look on her face, and she sniffed, turning her face toward the sun and closing her eyes. Let's just say you're not the only one in this town who knows how to gather information. You've been talking to another private investigator. Mona stiffened. I could have found out that information myself. Is that why you turned up on Grizzy's doorstep the other night asking for my help? Because you can do it yourself. Mona's gaze snapped to my face. Keep your voice down. I don't need anyone thinking I would ever rely on you. She had relied on me in the past, and then she'd slowly turned to the dark side again. It's the private investigator, isn't it? None of your business. And they told you that it was Esther who stole the stuff? I asked. Mona zipped her lip. What else did they tell you, Mona? Her crimson lips trembled. Mona was a sucker for gossip. I guess you don't know anything of interest, I said, rising to leave. Mona's clawed grip stopped me. She squeezed my arm. You tell anyone I told you this and you're dead. Sure. Esther stole those papers from Chell's store. And Layla, the owner of the new bookstore in town, she's the one who killed Chell. That's so? Yeah, that's so. And you had no idea because you're a terrible private investigator, Mona said. And I assume you've gone to the cops with this information? Me? Of course not. I didn't hire him to find out the truth about the murder, only about the letters. If he told the police, then that's his problem. So, it's a guy, this private investigator? Mona shrugged. Doesn't matter. You've lost your touch, Christie. You're not as good as you think you are, and this guy is. He's the real deal. So, you believe that Layla killed Chell, but you're not going to approach the cops with this information, I asked. Don't try to guilt me. This is none of my business. My only focus now is planning my revenge on Esther. She thinks she can shove me out of power in this town? She's in for a rude awakening. Nobody messes with Mona Jonah and comes out the other side unscathed. She wasn't wrong. What about you, Mona? I asked. What do you mean? Where were you when Chell was murdered? Huh? On Monday at around noon. Where were you? Mona opened her mouth, then snapped it shut again. What's that got to do with anything? I have it on good authority that you were at the bookstore when Chell was there, though whether that was true or not was now up for debate, especially since two of the suspects had claimed that Harriet was lying. So, I said, when Mona didn't immediately answer me, what's the deal? Were you there or not? Don't answer that question, Mona. A deep rumble cut through the light fall breeze. Chapter 14. A man cut an intimidating figure as he strode through the park toward us. Beige trench coat with the collar popped, a fedora that shadowed his forehead but not the stare from ice-blue eyes, and a weedy chin barely masked by a blonde goatee. This had to be the guy. He was like a caricature of a private investigator, and I didn't recognize him from around Sleepy Creek. Investigator Brown, Mona said, enthusiastically. I'm so glad you're here. I was telling Christie how her days were numbered in Sleepy Creek thanks to your new business. I rose from the park bench and extended a hand. The investigator stopped, tucking his pockets into the hands of his coat and arching an eyebrow. "This is the woman you were telling me about?" He sounded confused. "She's meant to be a private investigator." I lowered my hand, considering the man. "I'm not meant to be anything," I said. "I am a private investigator, a successful one, with a background as a homicide detective." The guy pouted his lips and looked around, as if searching for an audience to back him up. "A homicide detective?" he asked, taking a step closer. He smelled strongly of bitter lemon. "That's cute, Miss Watson, but I was a member of the FBI for 20 years. He looked to be in his mid-30s. Unless this guy had been an agent in his teens, that was a blatant lie. "I heard they have that outreach program for middle schoolers," I said. Brown sniffed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "What's your name?" "Investigator Brown," he said. No, your real name. Your first name." "You're the private investigator, Miss Watson, so you figure it out." And he tipped his fedora upward to give me a smirk. I walked over to him, drawing closer so that he actually shifted his weight back and away from me. "Oh, don't worry, Investigator Brown," I said. "I'm going to make it my mission to find out exactly who you are." He gulped, his Adam's apple bobbing. "See you around, Mona," I said. "Thanks for the info." And then I strode off toward the exit, ignoring the scoff from this new private investigator. I'd never met anyone like him. The guy smelled fake to me. He had just appeared out of nowhere wearing a trench coat and a fedora, playing the part of a private investigator rather than actually being one. I didn't trust him or anything he'd told Mona. My bet was that he'd told her what she wanted to hear so he could scam her out of her money. And the funny, or rather sad thing, was that Mona wouldn't even thank me if and when I exposed him. Getting ahead of yourself. You don't know he's a scammer. But where was he from? Why had he suddenly appeared in town? And why had he decided to start a business here when there were barely enough cases to go around for one private investigator? I stormed back to my Corvette, got in and peeled out of the parking space, chewing on my ire. The guy had better watch his back. He wasn't going to roll into town and take my gig. He certainly wasn't going to protect the people of Sleepy Creek in my place. This town didn't need more trouble. I was so angry I only noticed the navy blue sedan with blacked-out windows following me 5 minutes into my drive back to the office. Someone was following me. Someone wearing black gloves that clutched the steering wheel, their face shaded by the sun visor and a peak cap. I couldn't make out who it was, but I memorized the number plate as I steered the car back toward the center of town. I took a left, then drove for a while, watching as the car turned into the street behind me. Another right, a left, and a right. I took a path that I never followed, and that was so specific, there wasn't a chance another car would be taking it. A black Chevrolet pulled in behind me, and I let out a breath, but sucked it back in again as the navy sedan turned the corner. Yeah, I was definitely being followed. But why? And who was it? Instead of trying to evade the person in the car, I pulled over to the side of the street near Layla's bookstore to see what they'd do. The sedan sped up and drove past, the driver obscured by the tint on the side windows. "Yeah, that's what I thought," I muttered. Whoever it was didn't want a confrontation with me. But that didn't provide me with comfort. Was this the first time they'd followed me? Was it one of the suspects? Or was it a member of the rumor crew or the gossip circle? Sleepy Creek was so darn crazy, it was difficult to predict who it could be. I took a couple of breaths, brought my heart rate back down, then started the drive back to the office. I arrived to find Mindy and Aggy sitting in the chairs in the reception area, playing their game and chatting amiably. "Christie," Aggy said, "how did it go?" "Did you see Mona? What did she say?" Nothing that was particularly useful, I said, running my fingertips over the lines on my forehead. But I do need to call Harriet and double-check what she told us was true. Wait, hold up. Mindy's head lifted and I nearly fell over out of shock. My assistant looking up from her phone to talk to me? That was a first. Mindy? Did you just say you needed to talk to Harriet? Yeah, why? Because that's my sister, she said. Harriet's your sister? The same Harriet who works at Layla's bookstore? I asked. Yeah, that's my sister. Why do you want to talk to her? Mindy asked. You'd better not think she did anything wrong because Harriet is like an angel and she wouldn't hurt a fly. I don't think she did anything wrong, I said. She gave me a couple of leads for my case, but I need to know if she was telling the truth. About what? I told Mindy, who waggled her head as she listened to me, giving me full Mindy attitude. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that my sister didn't lie, and that she called me right after Chell knocked that stuff off the counter at the bookstore. She told me all about it, and she said how weirdly busy they were for that time of day. I'd have to confirm with Harriet regardless. Thanks, Mindy. I appreciate it. I wasn't targeting your sister. You'd better not, Mindy said and returned to her game, because I am so totally about to get a high score right now, and I don't need any distractions. I left her to it and entered my office. Considering what I knew so far, there had been someone from the rumor crew in that bookstore. Mona had been there, and either Walton had paid a visit, or there had been someone matching his description present. So why were the three of them lying to me? My head buzzed with the facts, but I couldn't put them together in a way that made sense yet. Chapter 15. At 7 that evening, I stood in front of the mirror in Liam's foyer and checked my appearance. Tonight was date night, and I was looking forward to time away from the case. Liam had been so busy we'd barely had a minute to ourselves lately. I checked my reflection. I'd chosen a pair of blue jeans, a pretty blouse, and paired it with a coat and high-heeled boots. My makeup was simple and not overdone, perfect for a night out on the town. Let's hope you don't run into Investigator Brown. I couldn't focus on that drama now either. Mona was a pot stirrer, and that so-called investigator was a puzzle I didn't want to deal with tonight. Liam came down the stairs smelling of cologne and looking dapper in jeans and a buttoned shirt. He swept me into a hug and I leaned into him, letting out a relieved sigh. Oh dear, he said. Rough day. Better now that you're here, I said. Let's talk about it at the restaurant. And then we left the house, and Aggy, who was upstairs gorging herself on pizza from Liam's place, and headed for my fiancé's SUV. Where are we going? Let's try somewhere local. This new bistro opened around the corner from your office. I thought we'd go check it out. Might be a fun time. I heard it's busy and it's getting great reviews. There have been a lot of new places opening up lately. Tourism in Sleepy Creek is picking up. Haven't you heard? Liam asked as he drove us toward the restaurant. We're the quirkiest town in Ohio. That and all the murders have got people intrigued. The wrong kinds of people, I groused. Liam parked in front of a cute restaurant named the Walnut Bistro, and we entered to find it themed in greens and browns, with square tables with candle centerpieces and polished wine glasses set out for the diners. Romantic, I said, and took Liam's hand. He squeezed my fingers as we waited for a server to seat us. Liam guided me to a table near the back. That was away from the hubbub in the center of the bistro. It felt private, even if it wasn't, and I liked that a lot. We ordered sparkling water and started on the bread basket while we studied the menu. The seafood linguine looks amazing, I said. They usually put a lot of garlic in those types of dishes, Liam replied. Going to make kissing you goodnight interesting. Have the linguine with me and then you won't have to worry about it, I laughed. And since when do you kiss me goodnight? We live together now. Fair point, Liam said, and ate another piece of bread. Man, this is fresh. Bread and warm melted butter. Could there be anything better? I smiled at him, but movement near the front of the restaurant drew my eye, and my stomach dropped. Investigator Brown had entered the bistro wearing his trench, minus the fedora. He was accompanied by a young woman wearing a beaded shawl and who had freckles across her nose. Sapphire Blaze, the busker. Suspicion swirled through my mind. What the heck were they doing together? "What is it, honey?" Liam asked, turning around. "Who's that guy?" "Investigator Brown," I muttered. "He's the other private investigator in town." "Wait, what? You never told me about that." There was a lot I hadn't told him about lately, but we'd been so busy. Hurriedly, I filled him in on my encounter with this new private investigator, the case I was working on and that I had been followed today. "Are you kidding me, Chris? Have you told Arthur about this?" Liam asked. "That would mean telling a police officer, and if Hardwick gets wind of this..." "Yeah, I don't want him knowing anything about how far I've gotten with this case." Liam ate another piece of bread, but he knew better than to try to deter me. I didn't blame him for worrying, but we'd come a long way since he'd been a detective himself. Back then, we'd butted heads, and I hadn't been able to keep myself from investigating these cases. Not because I didn't trust him, but because it filled a gap inside me. A gap my mother's passing had left behind, and one that would likely never be filled. So, you've got 3 main suspects. A case of someone writing hate mail, and then there's the theft from the victim's scrapbooking store, Liam said. "Yeah, and this strange new private investigator who, quite frankly, looks like he bought a sleuth Halloween costume and called it a day." "Exactly." "That's a lot on your plate," Liam said. The server arrived to take our order, and I opted for the linguine, while Liam got a good old-fashioned lasagna with the promise that we would share. His presence was calming for me, a way to unwind, even if that darn investigator Brown and the busker were sitting right across the restaurant from us, and having an argument, it seemed. "Do you want to talk about it?" Liam asked. "On our date?" I asked. "Of course. We both love mysteries, and the atmosphere is perfect for it." I laughed and squeezed his hand. "I love that about you." "I love everything about you, Christie." Swoon. My worry is that I have too much going on, and also how the different elements connect. Could the stationery which the hate mail writer used have come from the scrapbooking store? Who stole from Shell, and how the heck am I going to figure out who's lying? None of their stories match up. "What do you know for sure?" Liam asked. "That Shell only left that burger unattended in that bookstore, that Harriet was too preoccupied by the fallen washi tape stand to notice who touched it. That's assuming she isn't the killer." "She doesn't have a motive? Number?" "She didn't even know Shell. She claims my suspects were there, but they're either all lying or have terrible memories. And then there's the fact that Walton has literally gained from Shell's death. He's her long-lost brother, and she took out an insurance policy naming him the benefactor. He'll only see that money if it's proven that he didn't kill her. And that's why he hired me. So you can't get alibis for this type of thing. Everyone's lying, and you have a new competitor, if you can call him that." I nodded, trying not to let the facts get to me. "Seems to me like you need to look into these other incidents, the theft and the letters. If they are connected, they might help connect pieces that are missing or don't seem to fit into the overall image." "That's a great idea, honey," I said. "Thank you." He lifted my hand and kissed my fingertips. "You would have got there yourself. Sometimes it helps to have outside input. And as for that chump over there, I wouldn't worry about him. He looks like a flake, and I doubt he'll be real competition for you. But it might be an idea to find out where he's from. Do a little digging." "Oh," I said, "I plan to. He's going to rue the day he came to this town and started messing around with its people." The food arrived, and we spent the rest of our date relaxing in each other's company, rather than stressing about the case. Just what I needed. Chapter 16. We arrived home after a relatively relaxing evening to find Aggy in the living room on Liam's comfy cream sofa, a bowl of popcorn discarded on the coffee table, and the TV remote clasped in her hands. She had on a face mask that made her look like Hannibal Lecter, and her eyes were wide. "Christie," she said, "Christie, you have to see this." Liam and I exchanged a glance, then went through to the living room. I dropped my purse on the armchair. "What is it?" "They've done the thing," Aggy said. "The thing?" "What thing?" "The thing that they do for the people." "I'm going to need a lot more than that," I said. There, see?" She gestured toward the flat-screen TV with her remote control. Sheriff Brunswick stood in front of a set of microphones, and a strip scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Breaking news. Sheriff asks for the public's help. Breaking news. Local woman. Chelly Hamilton's death ruled as poisoning. I flapped my hand for the remote, then turned up the sound on the TV and joined my cousin on the sofa. She turned her head stiffly, likely so the face mask wouldn't fall off, to stare at me. "Can you believe it, Christie?" "They've finally released a statement." "Uh-huh." I needed to hear this from the sheriff, who was giving his speech on a raised stage in a conference room with gray walls bearing the sheriff department's logo. Particularly the work of the local police department in Sleepy Creek. Detectives Hardwick and Cotton have made headway in this case, but at this time, we are asking for any members of the public who might have information about the case to come forward. I'll now turn this over to Detective Hardwick for more details. And then Brunswick, balding, dark-haired, and with dark circles under his eyes, stepped back. Detective Hardwick swaggered up to the podium, and I huffed out a breath. Liam placed his hands on my shoulders and squeezed. "Thank you, Sheriff," Hardwick said, running a hand through his hair. The fluorescent lights in the conference room weren't doing him any favors, but he looked tired. Determined, even. The members of the sheriff's department and the police department have been working in tandem to solve this terrible crime. While it's been hard work, we have made significant headway over the last couple of days. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, cleared his throat, and shuffled notes on the podium. At this time, we can confirm that this was a case of poisoning, and that Chelly Hamilton's death was malicious. We're asking that any member of the public who thinks they saw something or who might have information that will lead to an arrest reaches out. We've set up a hotline for tips related to the case. The conference room was filled with the sounds of shuffling, an odd mutter or cough, the click of a camera. Chell was a treasured member of Sleepy Creek's community, a scrapbooker, a friend, a sister, and a daughter, he said. It's our intention to solve this case as quickly as possible and to bring peace back to the town. Another shuffling of the papers on the podium, and then Hardwick's stare hardened. We've been made aware of several citizens who think that taking matters into their own hands is the correct way to go. I can assure you that's not the case. While we're taking information and tips, we encourage the public to keep out of this case and allow us to do our jobs. And the way his gaze locked onto the camera made me feel as if this was directed at me. Likely it was. I'll now open the floor to questions. Please understand that there are answers I cannot provide as this is an ongoing case. Immediately, hands flew up in the air, and a short man to one side of the podium pointed to a reporter off-screen. "Detective Hardwick, can you comment on what type of poison was used to murder Chell Hamilton?" A woman's voice. "Unfortunately, I can't comment on that at this time." "But it was poisoning for sure?" the woman asked, her tone slightly nasal. "Not an allergic reaction or—" "It was poisoning," Hardwick said. then turned his head to the assistant who was directing the questions, effectively cutting off the reporter. I got that. There were certain things that the department couldn't reveal as it would compromise the case and whatever court proceedings followed, but he was still so darn rude it annoyed me. "Do you have any person of interest?" That was from a male reporter. "Yes," Hardwick replied. "We have several persons of interest, but I'm unable to divulge any other information about them at this time. As the case progresses, that may change. But for now, I can't say anything else." Several persons of interest? That made me think I was on the right track and that Hardwick and Arthur were struggling as much as I was. A woman waved her hand near the front row. Should the public be worried about another attack? Do we have a serial killer on our hands here? Hardwick gave a beleaguered sigh. "We believe this was a targeted attack. We're not advising the public to act differently in their personal capacity, other than to report any information that may pertain to Chell Hamilton's death through the relevant channels. But I'm afraid that's all the time we have for questions," Hardwick said. "I trust that you'll all act in the best interests of this town." Another threat direct to the camera. The man had to know I'd be watching. "Right," I said, and muted the TV as the footage cut back to the news desk. "Right. It keeps repeating like that," Aggy said. "You know they cut back to the anchor, and then they replay the conference again." I nodded and gnawed on my bottom lip. "Poisoning confirmed," Liam said. "But you already knew that." "Yeah, it was the only thing that made sense, especially since they didn't rule it as natural causes shortly after she passed," I muttered, and scraped a hand over my face. "But the way he said multiple persons of interest worries me." "Why?" Aggy asked. "Because it means they don't know who did it. They're confused too, and if they're confused, that makes it more urgent that I do intervene and figure out what happened." I got up, still holding my purse, and Liam took it from me and walked it through to the foyer where he hung it from the hat rack. I followed him, half in a daze. "Honey," Liam said and took me by the arms. "You've got this. It's going to be okay. You know that, right?" "Do I?" I asked. "It's confusing, Liam. How does it all connect?" "The thefts," Liam said. "The letters. Remember what we talked about at dinner?" He drew me into his arms and I relaxed against his chest, shutting my eyes. "You're right. Tomorrow I'll start with the theft. I'm going to find out who did this, Liam. I'm going to make them rue the day they disturbed the peace in this town." Chapter 17. The following morning, I gave Poirot, the best cat in the world paws down, a cuddle, then showered, brushed my teeth, and grabbed a cup of coffee before heading out of the door. Aggy trailed me, yawning occasionally, and wearing a purple beret today. "Look alive, Agatha," I said. "Today is important." "We're going to figure out who did it today?" "We're going to try," I replied. I shoved thoughts of Mona and Investigator Brown to the sides of my mind and focused on driving the Corvette over to Chell's scrapbooking adventures. The store was open, the doors thrown wide to let in customers and the brisk morning breeze. We parked out front and Aggy let out a squeal of delight and hurried inside, immediately circling toward the displays of colorful paper. I entered after her and approached the counter where a young woman had just finished ringing up a customer. The counter itself was stocked with upsells, pink erasers shaped like kittens, gum and washi tape singles to tempt those checking out. "Good morning, ma'am," the woman said with a smile. "How may I help you today?" A name tag was tacked to the front of her neat white golf shirt. "Shauna," I said. "My name is Christie Watson. I'm a private investigator." She gave me a timid smile, ducking her head as she tucked dark braids behind her ear. "Another one?" "I take it you've encountered Investigator Brown?" "Ugh, yeah," she said, then put out a palm. "Oh, wait, he's not your friend, is he?" "I didn't mean—" "He is not my friend," I replied. "Oh, good. she said. "I thought I'd put my foot in my mouth there." "No, you're good. When did Investigator Brown come by?" "About half an hour ago," she said. "He was kind of rude. Said he would be back for more, whatever that means. Anyways, how can I help you?" "Here's the deal, Shauna," I said. "I'm investigating the recent thefts that took place in this store. I've been hired by your new boss, Walton." Shauna's eyes rolled to the left at the mention of Mr. Hamilton. Interesting. "Okay, cool. I'll help you. No problem. Better than talking to that other guy. He's really creepy." "It's the trench coat, isn't it?" "And the fedora. The combination is potent." I laughed, and Shauna joined in. Behind me, Aggy let out an excited cry. "Christie, they have planner stickers. Planner stickers. Oh my gosh, this place is amazing. I could live here." "Glad you're having fun," I called back, then turned to Shauna. Before she passed, Chell mentioned that the store had been robbed several times. "Is that true, Shauna? Are you the only one who works here?" "Pretty much, yeah, apart from Chell herself when she was still around," Shauna said. "And she was telling the truth. Stuff went missing loads of times. Honestly, it kind of bugged me because at first, Chell thought I was the one stealing from her. But when it happened, when I wasn't working and she was, that was kind of the game changer." "Did she end up installing cameras?" "So she actually had cameras at one point, but they broke. I think because she bought them from this online store that wasn't exactly reputable," Shauna said. "Chell was like that. She preferred to cut costs and corners wherever she could. Rest in peace." She pulled her shoulders upward and bit her lip. "She was a good boss, though. Like after the whole accusing me of stealing washi tape thing, she was kind and fair." "She had cameras, they broke, and did she plan on replacing them?" I asked, directing the conversation. "Yeah, she talked about it on the morning. She, died." "Yeah, she never got around to it." "No," Shauna said, "but I think Mr. Hamilton wants to install them. I don't know when, though." "And when was the last time there was a theft?" I asked. Shauna tapped her chin. Let me think. Oh my gosh, okay. So the last time anything went missing was actually the day that Chell died." "Oh yeah? Yeah. It was literally..." "Okay, so let me think. So, Chell left the store after I arrived at like 8 in the morning. She mentioned going to visit a couple of friends, getting something to eat, and that she'd be right back." Shauna paused. "Everything was fine until around I want to say close to noon?" "What happened at that time?" I asked. "I was manning the front desk as usual when I heard a noise in the back of the store, at the offices. I went back there to check what was going on, but everything was locked up tight. It almost sounded like a bang. But on the roof?" Shauna nodded. "Yeah, exactly that kind of noise. I checked out of the office windows that the safe was locked, and then I went back to the front desk. And that's when I saw it." "What?" "A roll of washi tape on the floor in front of the counter, right there." Shauna pointed past me to the floor. And then I noticed that the entire dispenser was empty. She tapped the dispenser that was now full of washi again. It was crazy. I must have been in the back checking on stuff for a maximum of 5 or 6 minutes, and when I came out, the stuff was gone. I was so bummed about it. I was sure Chella would be furious with me, but then she never came back. I pieced it together in my mind. "What time did you hear the noise?" "It was just before noon," Shauna said. "I remember because I ordered takeout from that new pizza place for lunch, and I kept checking the time because I was hungry." "Just before noon?" 55 minutes past 11. So at 11:55 a.m. on Monday, you heard the noise, went to the back, and when you came out about 5 minutes later, the washi had been stolen." "That's right." It was like a light bulb had clicked on in my mind. "Thank you, Shauna. That's incredibly useful." "Of course, no problem." "One last question?" Sure, she said. Did you have any suspicions about who might have stolen the washi? Shauna tapped her chin again. Yeah, but I don't like to talk negatively about people. Gossip isn't my thing. Refreshing. I won't tell anyone you told me your thoughts about this. Okay, Shauna said. I kind of got the vibe that Layla from the bookstore was moving in on Shell's business. And that's not even because of what Shell said. It was the way she acted. Like, Layla would come around to the store when Shell wasn't around, and then, when the washi started going missing, she stopped showing up. You're kidding, I said. Not even a little bit, Shauna replied. Call me mean, but I think it was her. I don't think that's mean, Shauna. Thank you so much for your help. You're welcome, she said. I hope you catch whoever did this. I like this job. I turned toward Aggy and watched as she hurried over to the counter, carrying a pink paper pad. She set it down, and the familiar scent of perfume drifted toward my nose. I slapped my hand down on the notepad, drawing a cry from Aggy. What the... Shauna, I said, did this paper ever go missing? Nope, she replied. Only the washi. This is a recent addition to our store. We only added it a couple of weeks ago. Nobody's bought it yet. I think it's because it's too pink and too... smelly. Shauna laughed, but it trailed off at the look on my face. Is everything okay? I turned and darted out of the store, nearly knocking Investigator Brown over on his way in. Watch it, Watson! He shouted, but I ignored him as I jerked the car door open and got into my Corvette. Chapter 18. Aggy, get in! I yelled out of my open window. Aggy came bustling out of the store, the pink notepad in her grasp, and hurriedly got into the passenger seat of my Corvette. Tell me you paid for that. I did, she said, putting on her seatbelt. I slammed the Corvette into gear, then took off down the street, leaving a shocked Investigator Brown in my rearview mirror. Aggy whooped as we took a corner at full speed. Where are we going? She asked. What's going on? We're going to Disaster Lane, to Chell's place. Aggy clung to her seat and the notepad slid off her lap. But what's happening? What did that lady say that made you freak out? Sorry, I said, and slowed down. Reckless driving wasn't going to solve this case, even if I did have an itch running down my spine. Christie? We stopped at a traffic light in Main Street, a block down from the burger bar. She said a couple of things which led me to believe that Layla, the owner of the bookstore, actually was the thief. First, she wasn't at the bookstore when Shell's burger was poisoned, which makes her innocent. But she doesn't have a real alibi for that time. My hunch is that she distracted Shauna, then stole the washi and made her escape. Okay, but she's not the killer. No, I said, she's not. And she told me something else. The light turned green and I started driving again, which was that the notepad, that same pink perfumed notepad, was new and it had never been sold before. Nobody liked it. Hey! Aggy picked it up from where it had landed at her feet. She pressed it to her nose. I like it. It smells nice and it's super cute. Regardless, I said, nobody else has bought it. Which means the only people who could possibly have had access to that notepad and have written those letters was either Shauna herself, Walton Hamilton, or Chell. Chell, the victim? Correct, I said. And if she's the one who wrote those letters, well, that might be the motive. I don't understand, Aggy replied, scratching her forehead. Motive for murder? Both Mona and Esther hated whoever was sending those letters, and who knows how many others in the town received one. It could be that someone took great exception to the letter or took the threat of secrets being revealed seriously and decided to get rid of Chell before she took the next step. We drove past the burger bar, and I glanced in the rearview mirror. Sapphire Blaze wasn't on her corner for once. So, you think the letters matter? I think that we don't have any other information that could possibly lead us toward the killer. None of the suspects are willing to talk or willing to stop lying. I continued down the street. We don't have a choice but to investigate, and it might be the thing that brings us closer to the truth. Can we stop by the burger bar before we go to Shell's house? Absolutely not, I said. The police don't have viable leads, or they wouldn't be begging for information from the public. And Hardwick... I wrapped my thumbs against the steering wheel. He doesn't want me involved. It's up to us, Aggy. She shrank down beside me. As long as we don't have to deal with Mona. No promises. I was full of energy for the first time in forever. This made sense. The cops didn't know what they were doing, and Arthur didn't want to talk to me. Still, a kernel of guilt appeared. What if Arthur needed this help? He could sure use it now that Hardwick was around. Grizzy had mentioned that Arthur didn't like him, and for a good reason. Hardwick was obstinate and controlling, and related to Mona Jonah. He wasn't impartial, but Arthur was. I pulled over to the side of the street, finding a parking space. Yes. Burger time? No, Aggie, just don't want to text and drive. I pulled my phone out of my purse, then unlocked the screen. Hey, Arthur, I don't want to use the tip line, but I might have information that can help you. Do you want to meet up sometime and talk about it? That would be awesome, Christie. We'll talk. Just we'll need you to submit an anonymous tip as well. Why? Because if Hardwick pokes around and finds out I got anything from you, he's going to have kittens. Understood. When do you want to meet? I'm following a lead today, but I can meet up tonight. At our house? Grizzy would love to see you, too. Of course. I'll be there. Can I bring Aggie, the twins? I think it's best if you and I discuss this alone. Ominous. I'll see you tonight. Thanks, Christie. I frowned at the screen. Arthur had to be stressed out. I could tell from his texts that he was in full business mode. Oh, and don't go near the Hamilton house today. My heart nearly stopped in my chest. How the heck had he known I was on my way over there? Why? Everything okay? We've got units over there because there was a report of a break-in. Hardwick's there. If he sees you, he'll flip. Appreciate the tip, Arthur. And then I tucked my phone away and grasped the steering wheel in both hands. What's wrong, Christie? Aggie asked, and the question was followed by her stomach growling loudly. Looks like we'll get to stop by the burger bar after all. It would give me the opportunity to talk to the twins about this anyway. Yes! Aggie hissed and pulled a fist. I'm crazy about those garlic burgers. Best special ever. Jarvis has talent, I agreed, absently. I glanced into my rearview mirror as a navy sedan with tinted windows pulled into the space behind me. Christie, what's wrong? You look like you saw a ghost. The sedan flashed its lights at me twice, then started its engine and drove past me slowly, as if to indicate I should follow. Christie, can we go to the burger bar now? You go, I said. I've got somewhere I need to be. Is that a good idea? I had to do this. Whoever had been following me the other day was back, and I was too curious not to follow through. Besides, I had my taser at the ready, but I wouldn't endanger Aggie. Get out, Agatha. Go have a garlic burger. I'll catch up with you later. My cousin did as she was told, but not before she gave me a concerned look. The sedan drove off. I followed it. Chapter 19. I followed the sedan through Sleepy Creek, away from the burger bar, until we reached a road that led out of town. The sedan pulled over near a rest area that was 2 benches, a table under a roof near some trees. I waited, my engine on in case this turned sour. Finally, the driver shut off the car and got out. My eyebrows rose as Sapphire Blaze, the busker, walked toward my car. She wore her glittery shawl, a black dress, and her hair loose around her shoulders. She stopped next to the Corvette and tapped the driver's side window. I scanned her briefly, checking for weapons or places she could easily hide them, then rolled my window down a little. Why are you following me? I asked. The navy sedan didn't suit her aesthetic. At first, it was for your protection, she said, in a voice that had none of the huskiness from earlier in the week. Now it was crystal clear and almost musical. But today, it's to get your attention. She reached into her bra and withdrew a badge, showing it to me. Special Agent Jill Roberts, FBI. Do you have a minute to talk, Miss Watson? Out of the car? I studied the badge. It was legit. Sure, I said. Is this about my cousin, Agatha? Agatha Dupin? Yeah. No, this isn't about your cousin, Aggy, she said. This is about you. I need you to get out of the car and follow me, Miss Watson. All right. I got out of the car, leaving my purse behind, but taking my keys with me. So, I take it you're undercover in Sleepy Creek. I am, Sapphire said. Most interesting cover I've ever had. I bet. We walked to the rest area and sat down. The air was nippy, and I regretted not having brought my coat, but I was too intrigued to go back to the car and get it. What's going on, Special Agent Roberts? She had taken the seat opposite me and sat stiff, her gaze occasionally moving past mine and scanning the area. But apart from the trees off to our left, there was nowhere to hide, and I doubted anyone would come out here to interrupt us. You returned to Sleepy Creek a while ago, correct? That's right. On sabbatical from your job as a homicide detective in Boston? Yes. And while here, you helped solve your mother's murder, which was connected to the Somerville spiders. Yeah? The agent nodded. I'm afraid I have some bad news for you, Miss Watson. While you did great work in bringing the Somerville spiders to their knees, you didn't get rid of them entirely. That's impossible. They're done. They're over. No, Special Agent Roberts said. They're not over. They're back. It was as if the world had turned on its head. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself and took deep breaths. Miss Watson, do you need a moment? I held up a palm and forced myself to focus on the here and now. But it was difficult. The only reason I'd been comfortable settling in Sleepy Creek after what had happened was because the spiders were gone. My friends couldn't get hurt by my past, by my mother's past, anymore. And if that wasn't the case, then what? Miss Watson. Yeah. I met the agent's gaze. This must be shocking for you, she said, but I wanted to assure you that we're here and we're watching. Watching? Why? Because we have certain contacts who've made it clear to us that the Somerville spiders may target you as revenge for what you did to their organization, she said. As a result, I'll remain in Sleepy Creek until the threat has been dealt with to ensure your safety and the safety of the citizens of the town. What do you mean, until the threat has been dealt with? How are you going to deal with it? I'm not at liberty to say, but rest assured that the FBI is aware of the issue, and we have agents working to resolve this. Special Agent Roberts paused. What we need from you, Miss Watson, is to keep your head down. That was a trigger phrase for me. There wasn't a day that passed that I could keep my head down. What do you expect me to do? Give up my job? I'm a private investigator. I ask people questions. I'm known around town. We haven't reached that stage yet. Yet? Look, Miss Watson, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. These people are incredibly dangerous. They know who you are, and they're out for blood. This might end in you entering a protection program, along with your family and friends. Our entire lives are here. This is our home, I said. My best friend just had a baby. Please tell me this is some kind of sick joke. Panic built inside me. It's not a joke. I wish it was. Look, Miss Watson, nothing needs to be done yet, but you need to stay as quiet as possible. Let me watch over you. Carry on with your day-to-day life, but keep your eyes and ears open, and try to avoid making a splash. And what about my friends? My fiancé, my cousin? Don't tell them, she said. The less people who know the better. You expect me to keep this from my family? Special Agent Roberts leaned in. Okay, look, tell your fiancé, maybe even your cousin, but nobody else. Nobody who can't keep a secret. This can't get out. You don't want this to get out. Do you understand? I do. Secrecy will help me do my job and keep you safe. Stay quiet, act normal. Let me deal with this. But the thought of this being out of my hands went against who I was as a person. My mother had been killed by the spiders. I'd nearly lost everything in my efforts to bring them down, and now I was expected to fall into line and let them do what they wanted. Are they in town? I asked. Not yet, she said. Not that I can tell, but I'll be watching, and I am prepared for that eventuality. Consider me your safety net, Miss Watson. I'll be here to protect you, but you must stay quiet. Stay quiet, stay aware. All right? I nodded, but I was hot all over, ready to jump into action and defend my friends, my family, my town. This was surreal. I walked back to the car in a daze and got in. Are you good to drive, Miss Watson? I'm fine, I said. I mean, I'm not fine, but I'm good to drive. One last thing, the agent said, leaning in, looking oddly serious in that glittering shawl. Don't talk to me unless I approach you. Act like you don't know me. Got it? Got it. And then she walked off, got into her sedan, and started the engine. She drove off. I sat there beside the rest area for what had to be a good 30 minutes until my phone started buzzing in my purse. Then I started the engine and steered my Corvette back into town, my shoulders tense. Chapter 20. That night, I took the drive over to Arthur and Grizzie's place by myself. Liam was at work. Aggy was having dinner with the twins, and Poirot was full and purring on our bed. Everyone was carrying on with their lives as normal, while I was stuck in mental limbo. The street lamps flashed by. This couldn't be for real. It wasn't that I couldn't deal with the darn Somerville spiders. I'd brought them down once before, or what was left of them. To be fair, they'd been on their way out then. It was that I'd thought I was free of them, free of worrying about my mother's past catching up with me, or my life as a homicide detective coming back to bite me in the behind. And if this was the Somerville spiders, come back anew, at their full strength, and they wanted revenge. Man, I didn't even want to consider the implications. It was a pity my brain hadn't got the memo, as it was insistent on torturing me with those very concepts. Grizzy in trouble, Arthur dead, little Ollie, oh my gosh, little Ollie, or Poirot, Missy, V, curly fries, my Liam. I swallowed a wedge of emotion and parked in Grizzy's driveway. I scoped out the place first, then got out of my car and hurried to the door. I knocked, and Arthur let me in a couple of minutes later. Hey, Christie, thanks for coming by to chat, he said. Sorry if I came across as short earlier. He smoothed his hand over his thinning blonde hair. I didn't want Hardwick to catch wind of the fact that you and I are communicating. He seems to hate you. Arthur shut the door and started toward the kitchen. I locked the door when he wasn't looking, then followed him to the table. Grizzy was already there, rocking Ollie back and forth and cooing to him. I gave her a half hug, then sat down. What do you feel like for dinner, Chris? Grizzy asked. We thought about ordering in, but I can make you something if you like. Whatever is easiest for you guys, I said. Are you okay? Grizzy asked. You look sad. What's going on? Nothing, I said. Just a rough day, and the case is kind of frustrating me as well. That's my cue, Grizzy said. I'm going to feed Ollie and put him down for the night. I'll order takeout when I'm done. I heard that the new bistro is amazing. My heart skipped a beat. The bistro where I'd had my date with Liam, how was I going to cope with telling him about the spiders? Grow up. You've been through worse than this. I had more to lose now than ever before. And that was what was stressing me out. Once Grizzy had left the kitchen, Arthur grabbed me a pop from the fridge. So, he said, First thing you need to know is that we arrested Layla Karsten today. For petty theft? Yeah, misdemeanor. She'll probably wind up with a fine since it's her first offense, but who knows? She was stealing from Chell's store. I'd been right about that. My concern is Hamilton. Arthur sat down across from me, taking a sip from his can, then tilting it toward me. What do you have on him? First, tell me what happened at Chell's house. Did they catch who broke in? No, and they didn't break in so much as break a window. The neighbor heard the noise and called the cops. Which neighbor? Esther Gray, Arthur said. Huh. All right, I said. As for Mr. Hamilton, he hired me to help find his sister's killer, or so he says. You have your doubts. The entire thing is irregular, I said. First, he's her long-lost brother. He happens to be in town. He told me he doesn't remember being in the bookstore when she was there, which is the only feasible place that Berger could have been poisoned, and then he admits that he's going to benefit from the life insurance policy. Arthur cupped his chin in his palm. And that policy was taken out recently. Exactly. So either he's the luckiest or unluckiest, depending on how you look at it, guy around, or he's a con man who killed his sister to inherit from her, then hired me to clear his name. You're the only one he's talking to, Arthur said. He doesn't want to talk to us, won't submit to a polygraph, and we don't have enough on him to get a warrant from a judge. Hardwick is like a bear with a sore behind. He won't let up. He thinks it's Hamilton for sure? I asked. He does, Arthur said, and I don't know where else to turn. Mona lawyered up, and we don't have enough on her to get her to talk. Harriet sang like a bird, but we can't corroborate her story. And Esther Gray claims that Harriet's lying. I heard the same from everyone. And don't worry, it's not like Hamilton's talking to me either. He also had a convenient lapse in memory regarding the morning of his sister's death. Darn, I was counting on you having something I didn't, Arthur said, then smiled sheepishly. Sorry if that's selfish. It's not selfish. I understand. We fell into an uneasy silence, both lost in thought. I almost wished I had my old yellow legal pad so I could hash out the details right here, right now, just like I'd always done at this very table in Griselda's kitchen, back when I'd been single and alone. Curly Fries wandered into the kitchen and rooted around near her empty bowl, then gave me one of those hateful stares that brought back all kinds of nostalgia. She was a black cat with an attitude, but at least she wasn't overweight anymore. She still hung around in the kitchen begging for scraps any chance she got. Arthur, I said, what about the letters? Which letters? Wait, the hate mail people have been getting? Yeah. We got a couple of reports about them, even people bringing the letters in and wanting to claim defamation. Of course, we had to explain that's not how defamation works, but that's quieted down now. When did it quiet down? I asked. This week? No, but when specifically? Oh, around Tuesday, I'd say. Arthur tilted his head. You think the letters have something to do with it? I don't know. Maybe. I feel like there are so few leads. Unless you can tell me what was used to poison Chell? Can't, Arthur said. I'd actually get disciplined if I did that, and it might compromise the case. Even us talking is bad. Just then, Grizzy swept into her friendly kitchen. She cooed at Curly Fries and lifted the lump off the floor and into her arms. There you are, sweetheart, she said. She'd always treated Curly like a baby, and that was probably why she was such a pampered and grumpy cat. You know, Curly's been missing Poirot. You've got to bring him over for a play date sometime. I can do that, I said, and then finished off my pop. I ordered pizzas from Liam's place instead of from the bistro, Grizzy said. I'll be huge by the time summer comes around, but I can't help it. They're just so good. I'll tell him you said that. He'll be so happy. Arthur's mood lightened, and Grizzy sat down next to him, resting her head on his shoulder. My ears started ringing. Chapter 21. I was halfway toward the house, my hands on the steering wheel of my Corvette, when I hit the brakes, clicked on the indicator, and turned right around. I couldn't do this. I could not stand by while this case went unsolved. If I didn't do something, I was going to go crazy worrying about Liam and Aggy and my friends. Get it together, Watson. What would my mother have done? I pressed a hand to my chest right over my heart and thought about it. What would Lilith Watson, homicide detective, empath, wonderful mother, have done in this moment? She would have attacked the problem head on. She would have stood up for the people she cared about and for the town she loved. She died for Sleepy Creek and for the people she'd tried to protect. I took the corner and headed toward Disaster Lane. The street was quiet. The houses, all lined up next to each other in a neat row, were still. It wasn't that late yet, around 9, but people's curtains were closed, their TVs on or their windows dark. I parked the Corvette next to the park, then hopped out and headed for the house. Part of the benefits of being a private investigator was that I didn't have to play by the rules anymore, and that meant I could take chances that a normal homicide detective couldn't, including breaking into houses. Illegal, but it wasn't my first time doing a little hands-on reconnaissance. It didn't look like the cops had decided to keep an eye on the place, which was already questionable. I hopped the picket fence, then moved down the side of the house. I found the broken window at the back of the house on the porch. It had been taped over with a plastic bag. I tore the top section of the plastic bag free and let it hang loose. There wasn't a breath of wind tonight, thankfully, so it didn't make any noise. And then I climbed into the house and dropped down inside Shella's kitchen. Glass on the floor crunched underneath my sneakers, and I carefully stepped to one side and checked my soles. Quietly, I moved through the house. It was a small place with an open layout, the living room leading into the kitchen. Down the hall, I found a bathroom, and finally, Shell's bedroom. I entered the space, bringing out my phone and using the flashlight to illuminate the bed, neatly made, white sheets, the closet door, and the desk that had been pushed against the wall beside an organized dressing table. The desk was my target. I opened the drawer and searched around inside it, but I didn't have to do much rifling through Chell's things. The notepad was right on top, smelling of perfume, a half-written letter on it. If I die, then know that it was because of these letters. This morning, my next-door neighbor, Esther Gray, came over to my house and threatened me. She said that I'd better keep to myself, that she knows that I'm writing the letters. I denied it, of course. Perhaps I'm being dramatic, but I don't trust her. Still no word from the police on arresting Layla for her heinous crimes against my store. Anyway, Had she been interrupted while writing the letter? But she'd had to have written this before she had come to see me at my office. Esther Gray had threatened her own next-door neighbor. But a threat didn't make Esther a killer. I snapped a picture of the letter. I had to... The tinkling crunch of someone stepping on glass in the kitchen drew my focus. I switched off my phone's flashlight and moved to the door, listening hard. Darn, I hadn't brought my taser into the house. I'd hardly expected that anyone would be here, but of course, if they'd broken in once, it stood to reason they'd do it again. What if it's a Somerville spider? The footsteps thumped through the living room and stopped. No, a Somerville spider wouldn't want me to know they were in the house. This was someone else. Quietly, I crept back down the hall, past the bathroom. I pressed my back to the wall and peered around the corner into the living room. A figure sat on the sofa, the blue light of a phone reflecting in their hand and illuminating their face. Walton Hamilton sat on his sister's sofa, texting in the dead of the night. "You don't have keys, Walton?" I asked. His scream was so high-pitched, a dog down the street started barking. Walton dropped his phone, scrambled over the back of the sofa, and thudded to the floor. "Walton?" I circled the sofa and switched my flashlight on again, directing the beam down at him. "What on earth are you doing here?" He pressed his hands to the floor and brought himself onto his knees. "Christie." "Yeah. I think it's about time you tell me the truth about what's going on, Mr. Hamilton." He gulped. "Before I call the cops." "Don't," he said. "Look, I'll tell you what you want to know, all right? Just don't call the pigs." I gritted my teeth. "Did I mention I used to be a homicide detective?" Oh, sorry. Didn't mean that, huh?" "What are you doing here?" Walton grimaced. "I've been living here. I don't have anywhere else to go." "What about your RV?" "That was a lie. Look, the truth is..." Darn. "The truth is that I'm not Shelley's brother. I just made her believe I was. I faked it, all right? I knew she was loaded because she was a friend of a friend on social media, and when I got fired from my job, I wanted a way out." "And she believed you?" "I faked the evidence. A genealogy report," he said. "I worked at this lab out in Boston, and they found out that I'd been stealing equipment from them and reselling it. So before I left, I printed out a report and claimed that Shell and I were related. She believed me. She even hired some private investigator to prove it." "Brown," I grunted. "Dillard Brown." "He's more of a hack than I am," Walton said. "Look, I know what I did is wrong, but I didn't do anything to Chell." "Then why are you so worried about the cops? And why are you telling me any of this?" "Because I paid you. You're supposed to protect and help me, and we can split the money from the life insurance policy once you've found the real killer." It took everything in me not to punch him right on the nose. "Why are you worried about the cops?" "Because I don't want them to find out I was conning her. It wouldn't take much digging to figure it out," he said. "All right, Mr. Hamilton, if you really want me to solve the crime, you need to tell me what happened in that bookstore on the morning of Chell's death." "Yeah, fine, okay." He scraped a palm over his forehead. "I didn't see much." "What did you see?" "I saw Chell enter, so I followed her in, then headed back to some of the shelves in the back. I could barely make out her head above all the planners and stickers and stands. There was a commotion at the front, and right when that happened, Mona bumped past me. We kind of knocked into each other and... My arm hair got caught in her bracelets," he said. "I tried to pull free, but it took us a full 2 minutes to get untangled. By the time it was over, the commotion was done and Chell was gone." "I see." I had the answer I needed. I had everything. Walton was a con man. Layla was a thief, and Esther Gray was a killer. The only one of the three in that bookstore who'd been in proximity to that burger. I focused my gaze on Walton. "I think it's time for us to leave, Mr. Hamilton. Someone might have heard the commotion. The cops could be on their way." Sure. But think about the money, all right? Consider it." I would do no such thing, but he didn't need to know that. Chapter 22. We left through the back window. I waited for Walton to go ahead of me. I had trust issues after what Special Agent Roberts had told me. "So, what do you say, pal?" Walton asked as we walked down the side of the house. "We share the money evenly?" I didn't want to answer him. I couldn't answer him truthfully without giving away the fact that the minute I was back in the Corvette, I'd be calling Arthur. "Which money?" I asked, playing dumb. "The money you're paying me to find Chell's murderer?" He tapped his nose as we entered the front yard. "Oh, yeah, sure. The money I paid you for that." "Ha, I hear you. We keep it on the down low, right? We keep it..." A feral shout rang out, and there was a blur of motion to my left. I dodged right as a large figure collided with Walton. The pair fell to the ground, grunting and rolling around. "What the..." Walton cried. "Hold still, murderer," Investigator Brown said, holding Walton down. He was in his trench coat, his fedora on the ground nearby. You're under citizen's arrest. What are you doing? I asked. No, wait, what are you doing out here? Make yourself useful for once, Watson, and help me with this criminal scum. He killed Chell. I opened my mouth to argue, but the lights had clicked on in Esther's house next door, and the facts came rushing to me in rapid succession. I couldn't afford to be here. I couldn't let Esther get away with Chell's murder, and Walton needed to be arrested for what he'd done as well. Without saying a word, I turned and walked toward the picket fence. I hopped over it and headed for the Corvette. Watson? What are you doing? Watson! Investigator Brown called after me. He had the wrong guy for the murder, but the right guy for another crime. I got into my car, shut the door, and drove off. I parked around the corner, then brought out my phone and stared at it. This was the right thing to do. I hated that it was the right thing to do. The tip line was available via text message. I sent a text through and attached the image I'd taken of the notepad containing the last letter Chell had ever written. And then I followed it up with a brief message. Walton is not Chella's brother. It would be enough for them to start looking into the claim. If Hardwick realized it was a tip from me, then, oh well. I doubted he'd want to credit me for helping him, but it would likely cause more friction between us. I was playing by the rules. Once I was done, I called 911 to report a domestic disturbance on Disaster Lane. Finally, I drove back to my house. When I got inside, I found Aggy asleep on the sofa. I walked over to her and covered her with a blanket, shut off the TV, and picked up her beret off the floor. I set it on the coffee table, then headed upstairs. Liam was already asleep in bed, and I crawled in beside him, aching with exhaustion and the worry about what had happened today. Before I could think too much about it, Liam threw his arm over me and drew me into a hug. Poirot jumped up onto the bed, purring, and ran over to snuggle up against my side. I missed you, Liam said. I'm glad you're home. I didn't expect you to be back so early. I was too tired to keep working tonight, so I left the restaurant with Dylan. That was Liam's new manager. That's good, honey. I swallowed the lump in my throat, or I tried to. Is everything okay? Liam asked. You sound like you want to cry. Everything's good now that I'm home. And the Somerville spiders could wait for another day. Chapter 23. 1 week later. I can never go to the scrapbooking store again, Aggy announced as she banged my office door open. And good morning to you too, Agatha. I studied her over the piece of paper in my hand, the case of Mrs. Fine's missing ring. It was a nice break from murder, con men, and washi tape. What are you talking about? I heard from V that... Excuse me, Mindy shouted from the reception area. I can barely hear my game. Sorry, Aggy said and shut the door. Don't apologize to her. I hit the button on my intercom. Mindy, you shouldn't be on your phone. Neither should you, but we're having this conversation, aren't we? There's a difference between a cell phone and, you know what? Forget it. I let the button go and turned back to my cousin. So wait, what's wrong? Mona bought Shelley's store. She's going to run it. Can you believe that? Now where am I going to get washi tape and stickers? Maybe Layla's bookstore will actually start purchasing them, I said, assuming she survives whatever article the newspaper writes about her. Aggy gnawed on her nails as she took a seat on her stool in the corner next to the filing cabinets. They ran a full article on how Detective Hardwick solved the crime. They called him the detective of the century, and they said he solved 2 unsolvable cases. I didn't particularly care. Hardwick knew the truth. He would have checked who'd left that tip, and he had my number. They say that he put Walton, that genetics guy, behind bars and the murderer, too. Aggy shuddered. It was really her, Esther. The rumor crew will have to disband now, I guess. And Mona had been absolutely insufferable over the past week. She'd been swaggering around the burger bar claiming that her dear friend Dillard Brown had put an end to it all. I had unanswered questions. Sapphire Blaze or Special Agent Roberts hadn't been in touch, and I was curious why she'd gone on a date with Investigator Brown. Was it to scope him out because he was new to town? Or was there more to it than that? Less worrying, more finding the ring. "Christie," Aggy said, "do you think Sleepy Creek is safe now?" The question hurt, especially after the tough conversations Liam and I had had this week. I'd told him about the spiders and that we basically had to keep it a secret. He wasn't happy. Neither was I. But I knew we could rely on each other, and our friends, and this town, until it's taken away from you. "Christie?" "Yeah," I said, meeting my cousin's gaze. "Everything's going to be fine." "Are you asking me?" "No. I'm telling you." Aggy got up and came over, straightening today's choice, a purple bucket hat on her red locks. She patted me on the shoulder awkwardly. "I'm your cousin, and I can tell that you've been upset lately." "I'm not upset, Aggy." She hesitated. "I heard you and Liam fighting." "We weren't fighting." That was a lot of raised voices for not fighting. "When did you get sassy?" I asked her. Another pat on my shoulder. "Don't worry about a thing, it will be fine." Strangely, it was what I needed to hear. I cleared my throat, then got up and brought my cousin into a quick hug. She stiffened as if she didn't know how to take the affection, then sighed and hugged me back. A knock at the door put an end to the moment, and Liam entered looking handsome in jeans and a shirt that was splodged with pizza sauce. "You know, your receptionist doesn't even try to stop me on the way in," he said with a quizzical smile. "I want to say it's because she knows who you are, but I'd be lying." I got up and gave him a hug and a kiss. "What a nice surprise. Are you joining us for lunch at the burger bar?" "I might," Liam said with a twinkle in his dark eyes. "But first, I figured we should talk." "About?" "Our wedding," he said. "I think it's time we set a date." Aggy applauded in the corner. "Are you serious?" I asked. "Now. We just invested in the pizzeria and we don't have a place for Aggy to stay. "Christie," Liam said, taking my hands. "Now is the perfect time. I want us to be husband and wife." And then he gave me one of his toe-curling kisses. Things weren't perfect in Sleepy Creek, but they didn't have to be. I had everything I'd ever wanted thanks to Liam, my friends, and Aggy, too. Thanks for listening to another cozy mystery audiobook by Rosie A. Point.